As the night settles in, so can you. Let us know in the comments, where are you listening this and what is your current time. After that, close your eyes if you like. Nothing we're about to discuss is urgent or even particularly interesting. And let us begin. In the bustling tapestry of ancient China, where emperors wielded power with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, a peculiar set of rules emerged that would make even the strictest modern lawmakers blush. Welcome to the world of the Qin dynasty's legal code, circa 221 BCE, where following the law was less about justice and more about avoiding a swift and severe end. The Qin dynasty, founded by the ambitious Qin Shi Huang, was the first to unify China. And boy, did they love their rules. Now, Qin Shi Huang wasn't just any emperor, he was the OG of the my way or the highway philosophy, fueled by the doctrine of legalism. Unlike Confucianism, which was all about morals and virtues, legalism was more like a medieval penal code mixed with a dash of paranoia. It was the Cold War of philosophies, where control and order reigned supreme, and personal freedom was about as welcome as a bull in a china shop. Legalism emphasized strict laws, harsh punishments, and the belief that people were inherently selfish and needed a firm hand to keep them in line. It sounds like a party, right? Imagine living in a place where even the clothes you wore were dictated by law. The Qin legal code didn't just stop at punishing criminals. Oh no, it was all-encompassing. Public conduct? Check. Dress code? You bet. The color and fabric of your tunic could signal your social status, or lack thereof, and stepping out of line could land you in a world of hurt. It was like a never-ending episode of What Not to Wear, except the stakes were a bit higher than a public shaming on cable TV. But why such an obsession with order? Well, the socio-political landscape at the time was as turbulent as a soap opera. The Qin had just emerged from the Warring States period, a time that makes Game of Thrones look like a friendly family picnic. Unifying China was no small feat, and keeping it together required more than just charisma and good intentions. It demanded a system that could enforce stability, even if it meant occasionally throwing a few people under the imperial bus. This legal system was not without its critics, though they often found themselves mysteriously silenced. Confucian scholars, for example, were about as popular with the Qin rulers as a skunk at a garden party. They championed the idea that people could be guided by virtue and moral example. The Qin, however, thought this was about as useful as a chocolate teapot. The infamous burning of books and burying of scholars under Qin Shi Huang's reign was not just a plot to ruin everyone's weekend plans. It was a strategic move to erase competing ideologies and ensure that legalism remained the one true path. This wasn't just about control, it was about eradicating dissent and ensuring that nobody got any funny ideas about disobeying the status quo. Let's not romanticize this era with notions of noble order and wise governance. The reality was much grimmer. The laws were enforced with a severity that makes modern penalties look like a slap on the wrist. Punishments ranged from fines and beatings to more permanent solutions like execution. And in a twist that would make modern HR departments cringe, families of lawbreakers often shared in the punishment, creating a culture of fear that was as pervasive as it was effective. The Qin dynasty's approach to law was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it created a unified state with standardized weights, measures, and even a common currency, which, let's admit, was handy for trade and economic stability. On the other hand, it was like living under a constant cloud of impending doom, where one wrong move could lead to your untimely demise. In essence, the Qin legal code was less about maintaining a harmonious society and more about keeping everyone in a constant state of vigilance. It was a high-wire act of balancing power with fear, ensuring that the emperor's grip remained unchallenged. This draconian approach laid the groundwork for future Chinese dynasties, albeit with some much-needed tweaks to avoid the whole empire collapsing under its own weight. As we delve deeper into this rabbit hole of ancient laws, let's remember that the Qin were trailblazers of their time. They set the stage for what would become one of the most enduring civilizations in history. But let's also keep in mind that their legacy is a cautionary tale of what happens when control and paranoia take the wheel. It's a stark reminder that laws, while necessary, are only as just as those who enforce them. And in the Qin dynasty, justice was a concept as elusive as a shadow in the night. And speaking of draconian legacies, let's fast forward to the Han dynasty, where the legal code took a turn for the familial. If the Qin dynasty was all about keeping the empire glued together with fear, the Han tried a softer touch. Well, softer if you consider a velvet-covered sledgehammer soft. The Han dynasty, lasting from 2006 BCE to 2000 CE, was like the sequel where the producers decided to add some human interest and romance to the plot. But make no mistake, the Han were as serious about law and order as their predecessors, only they decided to throw family dynamics into the mix. In a world where family hierarchy was the backbone of society, the Han dynasty took filial piety, respect for one's parents and ancestors, to levels that would make even the most doting son break into a cold sweat. The Confucian ideal of filial piety wasn't just a suggestion, it was law. Think of it as the original Family Feud, but instead of winning cash prizes, you were trying to avoid a public shaming or worse. The Han legal system was like a stern elder at a family reunion, constantly reminding everyone of their place and duties. One of the peculiar aspects of this system was the 5 punishments, which, let's be honest, sounds more like the title of a medieval horror show. These range from tattooing the face to cutting off the nose. And if you think that's harsh, remember that these were just the starting penalties for minor offences. Major crimes, like failing to properly mourn a parent, could result in exile or even death. Yes, you heard that right, grieving was a legal obligation, not just a personal one. Skip a funeral, and you might be skipping town too, permanently. Now, why such an obsession with familial loyalty? For the Han, it was all about maintaining social harmony and moral order. Families were the microcosm of the state, so keeping them in line was like having a well-oiled machine. If everyone knew their roles, from the obedient children to the wise elders, the whole empire could run smoother than a greased piglet at a county fair. But behind this seemingly noble endeavour lay a system that could be as brutal as it was rigid. It was social engineering at its finest, or worst, depending on where you stood. The Han legal code also dictated marriage laws with a precision that would make a modern wedding planner's head spin. Marriages were less about love and more about economic and social alliances. Love was a luxury, like owning a pet dragon. The dowries and betrothal gifts had to be just right, and woe to the family that couldn't come up with the right financial package. It was like shopping for a new car, only the stakes were a lot more personal. Fail to follow these regulations, and you could find yourself at the sharp end of a legal spear. But the real kicker in the Han's legal system was the hierarchy it enforced. Social rank wasn't just a status symbol, it was an operating manual for life. The law stipulated everything from the number of concubines a man could have to the colour of clothes different classes were allowed to wear. It was like a medieval version of a corporate dress code, but with more embroidery and a lot more at stake. Yet, despite, or maybe because of, these rigid structures, the Han dynasty thrived. Their economy boomed, bolstered by the Silk Road trade and innovations like paper and the wheelbarrow. The legal system, with all its oddities, was a reflection of the time's economic and political landscape. The laws weren't just about control, they were about ensuring stability in a world where chaos was always lurking in the shadows. But let's not get carried away with the romantic notion of a well-ordered society. The reality was more about maintaining power and control. Laws about filial piety and social hierarchy were as much about keeping people in their place as they were about promoting harmony. It was like a game of chess where the pieces were real people, and moving out of turn could cost you your head. In essence, the Han legal system was a delicate dance between the carrot and the stick. It offered the promise of a stable society, but only if everyone followed the rules to the letter. It was a legal code that aimed to mould not just behaviour, but thought itself, ensuring that each citizen knew their place in the grand scheme of things. And if anyone dared to step out of line, well, the penalties were as clear as they were severe. As we leave the Han dynasty's peculiar legal landscape, remember that these laws were more than just quirks of history. They were the backbone of a society striving for order in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. And while the methods may seem harsh to us today, for the Han, they were the tools necessary to build an empire that would endure for 4 centuries. So next time you grumble about modern family obligations, spare a thought for those ancient Chinese who had to navigate a legal minefield, where a misstep could lead to more than just a family squabble. As we leave the Han dynasty's peculiar legal landscape, we step into the Tang dynasty's era of legal finesse, where the rules were crafted with the precision of a master calligrapher's brushstroke. The Tang dynasty, stretching from 618 to 907 CE, was like that one Renaissance friend who's good at everything: art, poetry, governance, you name it. But what truly set them apart was their legal code, the Tang Code of 624 CE, which was the Harry Potter of legal texts, wildly popular and with a lasting influence on East Asia that rivals Rowling's Wizarding World. The Tang Code was a marvel of its time, blending the lofty ideals of Confucianism with the gritty realism of governance. While previous dynasties were busy playing the who can make the harshest law game, the Tang took a more nuanced approach. Imagine a legal system that wasn't just about keeping you in line, but also about understanding why you might step out of it in the first place. Radical, right? Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The Tang Code was divided into 12 volumes and 502 articles, covering everything from theft to treason. It was like a medieval version of Law and Order, but with more robes and fewer commercial breaks. What made it stand out was its focus on intent and circumstance. For example, if you caught someone stealing your favorite silk robe, the punishment could vary dramatically, depending on whether they were stealing out of necessity or simply because they fancied your fashion sense. Speaking of fashion, let's talk about the Tang's intriguing sartorial regulations. Yes, the Tang dynasty had laws about who could wear what, because why not add a splash of couture to your legal code? But these weren't just arbitrary style choices. They were a reflection of the empire's social hierarchy. The colour purple, for instance, was reserved for the upper echelons of society. Wear it without the right credentials, and you could find yourself in hot water, figuratively and perhaps literally, if the magistrate was feeling particularly old school. The Tang were all about balance, like a well-made cup of tea. They understood that while laws were necessary to maintain order, they also needed to be fair and adaptable. This is where Confucian ideals came into play, emphasizing morality and familial duty over blind obedience. It wasn't just about punishing bad behavior, it was about fostering a sense of responsibility and virtue. In a world where the family was the building block of society, keeping harmony at home was seen as a way to ensure harmony in the state. Economically, the Tang dynasty was a powerhouse, with a bustling trade network that included the famous Silk Road. The legal system helped facilitate this economic boom by providing a stable environment for commerce. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of a pro-business tax code, minus the loopholes and offshore accounts. Merchants could trade with confidence, knowing that the law protected their interests, provided, of course, they paid their taxes and didn't try to game the system. But let's not get too misty-eyed about the Tang legal system. For all its sophistication, it wasn't exactly a utopia. The death penalty was still a thing, and while the Tang Code tried to ensure it was only applied in the most severe cases, severe was sometimes in the eye of the beholder. And let's not forget the delightful practice of corporal punishment. The Tang had a nifty little system known as the 5 punishments, which included flogging and exile. It was like a medieval spa day, but with more bruises and fewer mud masks. The code's influence was profound, spreading its legal philosophy across Korea, Japan, and Vietnam like a well-received viral tweet. It set the gold standard for what a legal code could be, comprehensive, adaptable, and rooted in a moral ethos. But the Tang didn't just rest on their laurels. They understood that legal codes needed to evolve with the times, which is why they periodically updated their laws, like software patches for a medieval operating system. And while the Tang Code was the star of the show, the background politics were equally fascinating. The dynasty had to navigate the treacherous waters of court intrigue and regional uprisings, all while maintaining the delicate balance between the civilian bureaucracy and the military. The legal system was a tool for ensuring loyalty and stability, but it was also a reflection of the empire's broader ambitions to create a society that was as orderly as it was prosperous. In the end, the Tang dynasty's legal innovations were a testament to the power of blending tradition with pragmatism. They understood that while laws could be a blunt instrument, they could also be a delicate tool for shaping society. And in a world where chaos was never far from the doorstep, that balance was more precious than gold, or in Tang terms, more precious than the finest silk. As we leave the Tang dynasty, remember that their legal system was more than just a set of rules. It was a reflection of a society striving to find harmony in an ever-changing world. And while the methods may seem antiquated today, for the Tang, They were the keys to building an empire that would be remembered for centuries. Stay tuned for our next chapter in the saga of ancient Chinese laws, where we'll explore the Song dynasty's approach to justice, and spoiler alert, it involves a lot of exams and a little less fashion policing. And with the Tang dynasty's legal curtain call, we step into the Song dynasty's era, a time when laws were not just rules, but a public spectacle. Imagine a government so dedicated to keeping its citizens informed that it turned its legal code into the medieval equivalent of a bestseller. The Song dynasty, reigning from 960 to 179 CE, wasn't just about refining laws, they were about ensuring every Tom, Dick and Lee knew them by heart. The Song dynasty's approach to law was like a masterclass in transparency. They pioneered the use of the movable type printing press, a nifty little invention that predated Gutenberg by a few centuries. Instead of waiting for oral tradition or hand-copied texts, the Song harnessed this technology to print and distribute legal codes like they were the hottest new scrolls on the market. This wasn't just for show, it was a strategic move to make sure ignorance was not a viable excuse. If you broke the law, you couldn't claim you hadn't read the fine print. It was literally everywhere, like medieval span mail. This commitment to publicizing laws was part of the Song's broader effort to create a more literate and informed populace. And let's face it, knowing the rules was a survival skill in a world where ignorance could land you in hot legal water. The Song even set up public notice boards, the ancient equivalent of a community bulletin board, where citizens could keep tabs on the latest legal updates. It was transparency at its finest, or perhaps most relentless. Now, while the Song were busy being the Oprah of legal texts, you get a law, and you get a law. They didn't shy away from some rather peculiar regulations. Take, for instance, the law against excessive mourning. Yes, excessiveness in grief could get you a legal slap on the wrist. The Song were all about moderation, even when it came to tears. The idea was to prevent social disruption and maintain order, because nothing says stability like regulating how much you can cry at a funeral. In this society, mourning wasn't just a personal affair, it was a public one. The law stipulated specific mourning periods based on your relationship to the deceased, and going overboard could be seen as flaunting your grief, which was frowned upon. It was like a strange social balancing act, where you had to show enough sorrow to demonstrate piety, but not so much that you disrupted societal harmony. Talk about a tightrope walk. But why the obsession with codifying and publicizing laws? For the Song, it was about creating a cohesive state where the rule of law reigned supreme. The socio-political climate demanded a system that was not only fair, but seen to be fair. After all, the Song dynasty was navigating a world where regional warlords were as common as street vendors, and maintaining order required more than just a well-trained army. It needed a populace that believed in the system. The Song's legal system was underpinned by Confucian ideals, similar to their Tang predecessors, but with a twist. They emphasized moral behavior and the importance of education, believing that a well-informed citizenry was less likely to break the law. It was a bit like putting the carrot before the stick, assuming, of course, that the carrot came with footnotes and a bibliography. Economically, the Song dynasty was like the Silicon Valley of their day, buzzing with innovation and trade. Their legal system facilitated commerce by ensuring that contracts and trade agreements were not just handshake deals, but backed by the rule of law. This stability helped them build an economy that was the envy of the world, with bustling cities and markets that thrived under the watchful eye of a robust legal framework. Yet, despite these advances, the Song dynasty wasn't without its quirks and contradictions. Their commitment to transparency and literacy was often at odds with the realities of ruling an empire where regional loyalties ran deep. The Song emperors had to navigate a delicate balance between central authority and local autonomy, a dance as intricate as any courtly waltz. And while the Song were busy printing laws like they were going out of style, they also faced the challenge of enforcing them. The legal system was only as effective as its enforcers, and in a world where corruption was as common as rice, ensuring compliance was a constant battle. This was a time when local magistrates wielded significant power, and not all of them were as pure as the driven snow. The Song dynasty's legal innovations were a testament to their belief in the power of knowledge. They understood that for a society to function, its citizens needed to be more than just passive participants. They needed to be informed and engaged. This commitment to education and transparency was a hallmark of their rule, setting a standard that would influence Chinese governance for centuries. So, as we wrap up our exploration of the Song dynasty's legal landscape, let's remember that their approach wasn't just about handing out laws like candy. It was about building a society that valued knowledge and understood the power of information. And while their methods might seem quaint or even excessive today, for the Song, they were the keys to creating a world where order and innovation could coexist. Stay tuned for our next deep dive into the legal labyrinth of ancient China, where the plot thickens and the mores get even more interesting. And just like that, our journey through the kaleidoscope of ancient Chinese law brings us to the present, where the echoes of these historical legal systems still resonate in modern Chinese society and beyond. It's like looking at an ancient tapestry, only to realize that the threads are woven into today's fabric of law and order. But before we wax poetic about the wisdom of the ancients, let's dive into the nitty-gritty of how these laws have left their indelible mark. First, let's tackle the myth of Confucian harmony, which is often idealized as a peaceful utopia where everyone knew their place and lived in blissful obedience. In reality, ancient Chinese laws were a cocktail of Confucian ideals and legalist pragmatism, with a garnish of harsh reality. It wasn't all philosophical debates over tea. Sometimes it was more like a high-stakes game of chess, where losing meant more than just bruised egos. The ideal of a harmonious society was often used as a tool of control. The Tang and Song dynasties, while more lenient than the Qin's iron-fisted rule, still had their fair share of laws that would make even the most law-abiding citizens squirm. The Confucian emphasis on filial piety, for example, wasn't just about family values. It was about reinforcing social hierarchy and ensuring loyalty to the state. It was the ancient version of Big Brother is watching, but with a Confucian twist. This blend of ideology and practicality created a legal legacy that's both revered and critiqued in modern times. China's current legal system, while vastly different, still carries the imprint of its imperial past. The emphasis on social harmony, respect for authority, and the collective good over individual rights can be traced back to these ancient codes. It's like the ghost of dynasties past whispering in the ears of contemporary lawmakers. But let's not pretend this influence is confined to China. The Tang Code, with its detailed legal structure, spread its wings far beyond Chinese borders, influencing legal systems in Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. It was the ancient equivalent of a blockbuster franchise, spawning sequels across East Asia. These countries adapted the Tang's legal principles to fit their own cultural contexts, creating a cross-pollination of ideas that would shape regional governance for centuries. Now, let's debunk some romanticized notions. The idea that ancient Chinese law was all about justice and fairness is a bit like believing that dragons once roamed the Great Wall. The reality was often harsher. Laws were as much about maintaining power and control as they were about justice. The elaborate legal code served to reinforce the status quo, ensuring that the emperor's grip remained unchallenged. It's a reminder that while the law can be a tool for justice, it can also be wielded like a weapon. Speaking of wielding laws like weapons, let's have a little fun imagining how some of these ancient regulations might fare in today's world. Picture a law banning pajamas in public, something that would have been entirely plausible back in the day when dress codes were strictly enforced. In a world where fashion is a form of self-expression, such a law would be met with universal eye rolls and perhaps a few pajama-clad protests. Yet, it's a quirky reminder of how deeply societal norms influence lawmaking. Or take the intricate mourning regulations of the Song dynasty. Imagine a law requiring you to publicly display your grief, but only within prescribed limits. In today's world of personal expression, where emotions are shared freely on social media, such a law would be as popular as a lead balloon. Yet, it serves as a poignant illustration of how laws once dictated not just actions but emotions. An attempt to regulate even the most personal aspects of life. While these hypothetical scenarios might seem absurd now, they demonstrate an important point. Laws are a reflection of the society that creates them. They embody the values, fears, and aspirations of their time. And as societies evolve, so too must their laws. It's a delicate dance between tradition and progress, a balancing act that every civilization must navigate. In wrapping up this whirlwind tour of ancient Chinese law, let's remember that these legal systems were more than just historical footnotes. They were the scaffolding upon which empires were built and societies were shaped. Their legacy is a testament to the enduring power of law as both a tool for order and a mirror reflecting the complexities of human nature. So, as you tuck yourself in tonight, perhaps in your favorite pair of pajamas, take a moment to reflect on the remarkable journey we've taken through the annals of ancient Chinese law. From the draconian decrees of the Qin dynasty to the philosophical finesse of the Tang and the intellectual transparency of the Song, we've seen how these laws were more than mere dictates. They were the lifeblood of civilizations striving for order amidst chaos. And while we may chuckle at the quirks and contradictions of these ancient codes, let's not forget their profound impact. They remind us that the pursuit of justice is a timeless endeavor, one that transcends borders and epochs. So, whether you're navigating the complexities of modern law or simply trying to decide what to wear in public, remember that you're part of a long and storied tradition, one that continues to shape the world in ways both seen and unseen. And with that, dear listener, we conclude our exploration of the strange and fascinating world of ancient Chinese law. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the stories that history tells. As the first light of dawn creeps through the wooden slats of your workshop, the city of Kyoto is already stirring like a pot of miso soup on a busy morning. You, an artisan of the 18th century Edo period, are part of this vibrant tapestry, a cog in the intricate machine of Japanese society. Forget the romantic image of the solitary artist lost in inspiration. Your day starts not with a muse, but with a slew of responsibilities. First things first, you roll out from your tatami mat, not unlike a sushi roll unraveling, and make your way to splash some icy water on your face. No fancy porcelain sink here, just a simple bamboo basin. With the chill biting at your fingers, you're reminded that, contrary to modern misconceptions, not all artisans live like Zen masters. In fact, the daily grind is more akin to a relentless treadmill. Now, let's talk about your breakfast. You might think it's all about sushi and sashimi, but in reality, it's rice, pickled vegetables, and maybe a sliver of dried fish if you're feeling indulgent. Protein isn't cheap, and neither is your craft. Take pottery, for instance. Clay doesn't just materialize out of thin air. You've got to source it, often from the outskirts of the city, and that costs Rio the currency of the day. One ryo might buy you a month's worth of rice, but it won't make you rich, especially when you factor in the cost of the kiln and glazes. Speaking of money, let's dive into the economics of your trade. Silk weavers might have it a bit easier. Silk is a luxury item after all, but the cost of raw silk can be staggering. In the 18th century, a single kimono could set someone back 2 to 3 ryo, equivalent to months of a labourer's salary. And while you might think this translates to a cushy life for the weaver, think again. The bulk of that money flows upstream to merchants and middlemen, leaving you to scrape by on the leftovers. As you gather your tools, you can't help but notice the social hierarchy that permeates every aspect of your existence. The class system is as rigid as the lacquerware you help produce. At the top, you've got the samurai strutting around with their swords and a sense of entitlement. Meanwhile, the merchant class, technically below you, often controls the purse strings, making them something of an indispensable nuisance. The rest of the morning is a blur of activity. In a world without power tools, your hands are your livelihood. Whether you're a carpenter meticulously planing a piece of wood or a potter shaping clay on a wheel, every effort counts. Each item you produce must meet the standards set by your guild, a fraternity of sorts, which both protects your interests and keeps you in line. If you think this sounds like a union, you're on the right track, though perhaps without the modern-day benefits. With the sun climbing higher, you find yourself elbow-deep in your craft. The myth of the noble artisan working purely for the love of art would be laughable if it weren't so misleading. Sure, there's passion in what you do, but there's also a pressing need to eat and pay taxes. You don't create for the glory of it, you create because it's your job, and because not doing so means a hungry belly and a visit from the tax collector. Lunch rolls around, and it's time for a quick bite. Another bowl of rice, maybe a cup of green tea, a staple since the 9th century. You think about the tea ceremony, an art form in itself, and how it underscores the importance of simplicity and discipline in your culture. Then you remember the cost of tea leaves, and the harsh reality that while some enjoy the tranquility of a tea ceremony, Others are just trying to keep the kettle boiling. As the day drags on, you find yourself contemplating the bigger picture. Why does any of this matter? Well, the Edo period is a time of relative peace and stability, a rarity in feudal Japan. This peace allows for the flourishing of arts and crafts. The Tokugawa shogunate, ruling from 1603 to 1868, imposes strict social order, but also encourages commerce and trade within these confines. It's a delicate balance, and you're one of the many threads holding together this intricate societal fabric. By the time the afternoon sun starts to dip, you're ready for a break. You might step outside, not just to breathe in the fresh air, but to observe the bustling life of Kyoto. The streets are alive with the chatter of traders, the clatter of wooden sandals, and the occasional melodious call of a street vendor. It's a world where everything is connected, where your work, no matter how seemingly small or insignificant, plays a role in this grand, complex machine. As shadows lengthen, you reflect on the myth of the noble artisan. It's a compelling story, but the reality is far more nuanced. Your work is vital, yes, but it's also part of a system that demands labor and loyalty. And while you might not be living the life of a celebrated artist, there's a certain pride in knowing that your hands have crafted something tangible, something that contributes to the daily lives of others. In this world, you're not just an artist, you're a survivor, a creator, and a cog in the ever-turning wheel of Edo Japan. And as the sun sets, casting long shadows across your workspace, you prepare to do it all over again tomorrow. Because while the romance of the artisan might be a myth, the satisfaction of a hard day's work is very much real. As the sun sets on another day of relentless crafting, your mind drifts back to the morning, a time when the possibilities seemed as endless as the day was long. It's mid-morning now, and you're knee-deep in the ritual of creation, surrounded by the earthy scent of clay or the soft rustle of silk. Let's dive into the workshop's world, where every item you produce is a testament to skill, patience, and the occasional outburst of creative frustration. Whether you're a potter or a weaver, your craft isn't just about innate talent, it's about the sweat and tears poured into mastering your skills. Apprenticeships are the name of the game here, a grueling rite of passage that can stretch from 5 to 10 years. Think of it as the original unpaid internship. Only instead of fetching coffee, you're mastering the art of clay wedging or the complex dance of warp and weft. Your master would have shown you the ropes, quite literally, if you're a weaver. And this relationship forms the backbone of your career. No degree here, just years of dirt under your fingernails and fabric cuts on your hands. Now, let's talk about the guilds, those gatekeepers of quality and tradition. These aren't just social clubs for artisans, they're more like the Jedi Council of Crafting, minus the lightsabers, but with a similar level of authority. They dictate the standards of quality and ensure that your products meet the expectations of a discerning market. Fail to meet their standards, and you're out faster than you can say kintsugi. But if you succeed, you're not just a craftsman, you're part of a lineage, a tradition that stretches back generations. It's quality control with a side of legacy building. And speaking of legacy, let's consider the political backdrop that shapes your every move. The Tokugawa shogunate, that omnipresent force from 1603 to 1868, isn't just dictating laws, they're dictating tastes and trends too. The shogunate's policies of isolation, known as sakoku, mean that foreign influences are about as welcome as a rainstorm at a festival. Yet this very isolation creates a unique market for your wares. A domestic economy where the demand for high-quality, locally crafted goods is booming. It's like being a top influencer in a world with no internet. Your reputation and skill are your social currency. But here's the kicker. The Tokugawa shogunate, with its structured society and rigid class system, inadvertently creates a proto-influencer culture. Daimyos and samurai aren't just political figures, they're trendsetters, dictating what's in vogue this season, from the style of kimonos to the type of pottery gracing their tea ceremonies. Sound familiar? It's the 18th century equivalent of following a celebrity's Instagram feed, only with fewer selfies and more scroll paintings. As you shape clay or weave silk, the rigorous standards of your guild weigh heavily on your mind. These aren't just arbitrary rules, they're a lifeline. They ensure that when a daimyo orders a new set of porcelain or a silk kimono, they know they're getting the real deal. It's a quality seal, a promise that your work isn't just good, it's exceptional. Think of it as the Michelin star of the artisan world. And let's not forget the economic realities. Sure, you're creating art, but you're also creating livelihood. The cost of raw materials is a constant spectre haunting your every transaction. Clay might seem abundant, but high-quality kaolin clay, the kind that creates the finest porcelain, is as coveted as a rare Pokemon card. If you're a weaver, raw silk is your holy grail, its cost as slippery as the fabric itself. And while you might imagine the life of an artisan to be all about creative freedom, the reality is that your creations are dictated by market demands and the whims of those with the Rio to spend. Yet, there's a certain magic in the mundane. As you throw a pot on the wheel or guide a shuttle through threads, you're not just crafting an object, you're weaving a story. Each piece tells a tale of tradition, skill, and the relentless pursuit of perfection. In a world without digital distractions, your focus is entirely on the tactile, the tangible. It's an all-consuming passion, a testament to the fact that even in a time of rigid social structures, creativity finds a way to bloom. And so, as the morning light filters through the slats of your workshop, you continue to craft, to create, and to contribute to a world that values your skill, even if it doesn't always reward it as handsomely as you'd like. The romance of the artisan is a compelling story, one that's been polished and retold through the ages. Yet, beneath the gloss lies a reality that's both harsher and more rewarding than any myth can convey. You're not just an artisan, you're a vital thread in the fabric of Edo, Japan, weaving together past, present, and future with every piece you create. As the morning's industrious energy gives way to the languid warmth of the afternoon, it's time to step outside your workshop and immerse yourself in the bustling marketplace, a veritable kaleidoscope of commerce and chaos. Here, you're not just an artisan, you're a player in a grand economic ballet, complete with its own choreography of supply and demand. Forget the quaint image of a sleepy market square. The reality is more akin to a stock exchange, only with more kimonos and fewer suits. Welcome to the vibrant world of Edo period trade routes, where goods flowed like sake at a festival. The Tokaido Road, the most famous of the 5 routes, is your lifeline. Stretching over 500 kilometers from Edo, modern-day Tokyo, to Kyoto, this artery is lined with bustling post towns, each teeming with merchants, craftsmen, and travelers. Imagine it as the granddaddy of all highways, minus the traffic jams, but with a fair share of bandits and bureaucrats. Now, if you think navigating this road was a walk in the park, think again. It was a logistical labyrinth, complete with checkpoints where your papers were scrutinized more thoroughly than a samurai's katana. The Tokaido wasn't just about moving from point A to B, it was about moving your wares to the right audience. And that audience? Urban centers like Edo and Osaka, where the population could swell to over 1 million souls, each with their own desires and demands. Let's talk about demand for a second. Edo's urban sprawl meant a constant craving for luxury goods, from elegant lacquerware to intricate pottery. The myth of the solitary artisan creating masterpieces in isolation? Pure fantasy. It was more like a cottage industry on steroids, with artisans collaborating, innovating, and sometimes even competing for the favor of wealthy patrons. These patrons weren't just buying products. They were buying stories, status symbols, and the allure of exclusivity. Enter the marketplace, a cacophony of haggling voices and clinking coins. Here, marketing was an art form in itself. Without social media influencers to tout your products, word of mouth was your best ally. If you were savvy enough, you'd cultivate relationships with influential merchants or even the occasional daimyo, whose endorsement could elevate your status faster than you could say shogun. And speaking of savvy, let's bust another myth, the idea that artisans were all about pure craftsmanship, untouched by the grubby hands of commerce. The truth? Many were shrewd business people, adept at branding long before the term existed. Take the famous potter Nonomura Ninsei, for example. Known for his exquisite kyo ware, Ninsei wasn't just a master of clay, he was a master of self-promotion, crafting a legacy that would endure for centuries. His signature, etched into every piece, was as much a mark of authenticity as it was a marketing ploy. Pricing your goods was no simple task either. It was an elaborate dance, balancing the cost of materials, the labor involved, and the market's fluctuating whims. A single piece of porcelain might fetch a handsome sum in Edo, yet barely cover its costs in a smaller town. And let's not forget the middlemen. those ever-present merchant class members who skimmed a tidy profit off the top, leaving you with just enough to keep the kiln burning or the loom spinning. So how did these artisans navigate such a complex economic web? With a combination of grit, guile, and a dash of luck. Trade guilds played a crucial role, offering not just protection but also a network of contacts that could make or break your business. Think of them as the LinkedIn of the Edo period, only with fewer endorsements and more face-to-face negotiations over cups of sake. But the market wasn't just about selling, it was about survival. The competition was fierce, and innovation was key. Artisans constantly adapted to changing tastes, whether it meant experimenting with new glazes or incorporating foreign influences, those few that snuck through the Sakoku policy's iron gates. The pressure to innovate was relentless, and failure to keep up could mean falling into obscurity faster than a kabuki actor's costume change. Yet, in the midst of this economic maelstrom, there was a certain magic to be found. Each transaction, each exchange of goods, was a testament to human ingenuity, a celebration of craft and commerce in perfect harmony. The marketplace was a living organism, pulsating with life and stories, each stall and vendor adding their own thread to the rich tapestry of Edo period Japan. As the sun begins its descent, casting long shadows over the bustling streets, you reflect on the day's lessons. The romance of the artisan, like so many myths, is both alluring and misleading. It's a narrative polished by time, yet beneath its gleaming surface lies a world of grit, toil, and unyielding ambition. You are not just an artisan, you are a navigator of this complex world, charting a course through the ever-shifting seas of commerce and creativity. Tomorrow, the marketplace will beckon once more, and with it, the endless dance of trade and tradition. It's a performance as old as time, where the stakes are high and the rewards, though hard-won, are all the sweeter for it. The myth may endure, but the reality is far richer. A testament to the indomitable spirit of the artisans who, through skill and perseverance, left an indelible mark on history. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, you find yourself contemplating the curious dance of status and identity that your work embodies. It's evening in Edo period Japan, and while the city's artisans pack up their tools and close their stalls, their creations continue to speak volumes, symbols of prestige and personal expression in a society obsessed with appearances and hierarchy. You see, your handiwork isn't just a collection of utilitarian objects. Each piece is a badge of honor, a status emblem as potent as a samurai's katana. That tea bowl you meticulously crafted? It might grace the home of a wealthy merchant, signaling not just his refined taste, but also his economic clout. In a world where social mobility was about as likely as a sumo wrestler becoming a ballet dancer, possessing artisan-made goods was one way to climb the invisible ladder of social prestige. The Tokugawa regime, with its rigid social order, claimed to offer harmony. But let's not kid ourselves. It was as tranquil as a pond full of piranhas. Sure, the surface appeared calm, but beneath it, tension simmered. The samurai, the supposed paragons of virtue, were often drowning in debt, reliant on stipends that shrank faster than a cotton kimono in hot water. Meanwhile, merchants, technically lower on the social scale, wielded the true power money. And you, the artisan, were caught in the crossfire, straddling the line between commoner and elite, crafting the very symbols that defined these social battles. But let's not romanticize the artisan's role without a reality check. Your hands are stained not just with clay or dye, but with the struggle for survival. Crafting isn't a leisurely pursuit, it's a lifeline. You're not just creating, you're competing in a cutthroat arena where every pot, every piece of lacquerware carries the weight of your livelihood. The myth of the peaceful artisan is just that, a myth. In reality, it's a daily grind, a hustle as relentless as the tides. Yet, there's a certain allure to this hustle. The Tokugawa peace, often praised as an era of stability, wasn't without its cracks. Peasant revolts cropped up like weeds in a garden, with over 1,200 documented uprisings during the Edo period. This unrest wasn't just a backdrop, it was a reminder that beneath the veneer of order, the societal fabric was fraying. And artisans like you, with your unique skills, were both witnesses to and participants in this ever-shifting landscape. Your work became more than just objects. They were tools of negotiation and survival. When times got tough, Your pottery might be bartered for rice or a silk kimono traded for essential supplies. The barter system was alive and well, a testament to the fact that currency wasn't just coins and ryo, but also the tangible results of your labor. In this world, every piece you created was not just a product, but a potential lifeline. But let's pause for a moment to acknowledge the seductive appeal of the myths surrounding your era. The supposed harmony under the Tokugawa shogunate is an enduring story with its promises of peace and prosperity. And while there's a kernel of truth, after all, Japan did enjoy relative peace compared to the chaotic Sengoku period. The narrative glosses over the realities of strict class hierarchies, economic disparities, and the constant threat of social unrest. As you ponder your place in this complex tapestry, it's clear that artisans weren't just passive players. You were active agents, shaping not only clay and silk, but also the very culture that defined the era. Your work didn't just reflect societal values, it helped create them, offering a tangible expression of identity in a world where identity was everything. So, as the stars begin to twinkle in the night sky, you reflect on your dual role, both a creator of beauty and a navigator of life's harsh realities. The romance of the artisan endures, yes, but it's the grit and perseverance that truly define your legacy. You are the unsung heroes, the silent architects of Edo Japan, crafting not only objects, but also the stories that will live on long after the kilns have cooled and the looms have fallen silent. As the evening deepens, the world around you transforms into a tapestry of shadows and whispers, each element weaving its own tale. The myth of harmony may persist, but beneath it lies a reality far richer and more complex, a testament to the artisans who, through skill and determination, carved their place in the annals of history. Yet as the night deepens, the work of the Edo artisan continues to echo through history, leaving a legacy that shapes our modern perceptions of Japanese culture. In a world that sometimes feels like it's spinning faster than a potter's wheel, the myths surrounding Edo artisanship have taken on a life of their own, spinning tales of serene tea masters and lone craftsmen. But let's face it, these romantic narratives, much like a perfectly composed haiku, conveniently omit the messy bits. The reality was much more akin to a chaotic ukiyo-e print, vibrant yet full of contradictions. Take the myth of the isolated craftsman, for instance. In truth, the Edo period was as interconnected as a Tokugawa family tree. Artisans were part of a bustling network of commerce and culture, their livelihoods woven into the fabric of urban life. Kyoto, Edo, and Osaka formed a sort of golden triangle of trade, each city a hub where ideas and goods flowed more freely than sake at a hanami party. The artisans weren't hermits, they were the original networkers, their work a product of collaboration and competition. And while today we might admire a piece of raku pottery or a finely wrought katana as art, back then these objects were as much about utility as they were about aesthetics. The tea bowl wasn't just a vessel, it was a symbol of status, a testament to both the owner's taste and the artisan's skill. This duality, art meets function, was the artisan's bread and butter, a philosophy that modern maker movements have eagerly adopted. Today's artisans, whether they're crafting bespoke furniture or intricate jewelry, owe a debt to the Edo craftsmen who knew that beauty and practicality weren't mutually exclusive. Economics, the ever-present puppet master, played a starring role in this narrative. The Tokugawa shogunate's sakoku policy, Japan's self-imposed isolation from 1639 to 1853, meant that local goods had a captive audience. The lack of foreign competition created a domestic market where the demand for high-quality craftsmanship soared. This wasn't just about aesthetics, it was a necessity. Without imports, the pressure was on Japanese artisans to innovate and elevate their crafts to meet the exacting standards of a society that prized perfection. Yet, let's not romanticize this too much. The artisans were as bound by the constraints of their time as the threads in a piece of intricate brocade. The Tokugawa regime may have provided stability, but it also enforced a rigid social order that kept artisans firmly in their place. The caste system was as unyielding as a samurai's code of honor, and while merchants might have held the purse strings, artisans were often left scrambling to make ends meet. Still, the legacy of Edo period artisanship is one of resilience and innovation. It's no coincidence that their influence is visible in today's craftsmanship renaissance, where the maker movement celebrates the handmade, the unique, and the personal. From artisanal bread to handcrafted guitars, the spirit of Edo lives on, a testament to the enduring appeal of objects created with care and skill. And let's not forget the cultural export that is the Japanese aesthetic itself. The minimalist elegance of a tea ceremony, the intricate detail of a kimono, the stark beauty of a bonsai tree. These are all rooted in the traditions that Edo artisans helped to cultivate. They've become global symbols, their simplicity and precision resonating with a world increasingly overwhelmed by the chaos of mass production. But here's the kicker. As much as we might romanticize the past, the reality is that the Edo period was no utopia. It was a time of contrasts, peaceful yet oppressive, stable yet restrictive. The artisans who navigated this landscape did so with a tenacity that is as impressive as any legend. Their work wasn't just about creating beautiful objects. It was about crafting a life within the constraints of their world, a balancing act as delicate as the finest porcelain. So, as you drift off to sleep with visions of kimonos and katana dancing in your head, remember this: the artisans of Edo weren't just creators, they were survivors. They were innovators and entrepreneurs, navigating a complex web of social hierarchies and economic realities. And while the myths may paint them as solitary artists lost in inspiration, the truth is far more compelling. They were the heart and soul of a society that valued skill and creativity, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire and captivate us today. In the end, the romance of the Edo artisan isn't just a story of craft, it's a story of humanity. It's about the quest for meaning and beauty in a world that often seems indifferent, and while the myths may endure, it's the reality of their struggle and triumph that truly resonates, a testament to the timeless power of the human spirit to create, to endure, and to leave a mark that echoes through the ages. The sun's just starting to peek over the Acropolis, casting long shadows over the ancient city of Athens. You find yourself in the heart of 5th century BC Greece, where breakfast is a humble affair consisting of bread dipped in wine. Yep, you heard that right, wine for breakfast. Forget the cereal and milk, this is the real breakfast of champions, or at least of Athenians. Food here isn't just sustenance, it's a matter of economic strategy, social status, and personal survival. Bread, the staple of your morning, doesn't just appear at your table by magic. It's the product of a complex supply chain that involves farmers, millers, and bakers, all of whom are essential cogs in the wheel of Athenian life. The cost of a loaf? Roughly 1 obol, which is about the daily wage for an unskilled worker. That's right, your breakfast is a significant chunk of your paycheck. The rich might toss in some honey or cheese for a little decadence, but for most, it's just plain bread and wine. Now, wine in the morning might raise eyebrows today, but in ancient Athens, it's as normal as your morning coffee. Diluted with water, it's the go-to drink because, let's face it, the water here isn't exactly Evian clear. You're not here to get a buzz, you're just trying to avoid a nasty bout of dysentery. Wine is your hedge against the microbial lottery. After breakfast, it's time to hit the agora, the bustling marketplace and the beating heart of the city. This isn't just a place to buy and sell, it's where ideas clash, philosophies are debated, and political alliances are forged. It's Facebook, Twitter, and the stock market rolled into one chaotic, noisy package. The agora is where you can find everything from olives and figs to the latest gossip about Pericles' latest political maneuver. You might even spot Socrates pestering some poor soul with his relentless questions. The marketplace is a reflection of the Athenian obsession with democracy. It's where you see the economy in action, and it's not always pretty. Here, the gap between rich and poor can be as wide as the Parthenon is tall. While the elite might casually pick up a few amphorae of the finest olive oil, others debate whether to splurge on a handful of figs. The agora is a place of opportunity, sure, but it's also a stark reminder of the city's social stratification. Athens is a city driven by commerce and trade, and its economy is as complex as a Greek tragedy. Silver from the mines of Laurium fuels the city's coffers, but it's the grain imports that keep bellies full. Local agriculture can't sustain the population, so grain ships are as vital as the triremes that defend the harbour. Control the grain trade, and you control the city's fate, a fact not lost on any ambitious politician. And speaking of politicians, they're everywhere. each one trying to sway public opinion which, let's be honest, is about as stable as a Spartan's temper. The agora is their stage, and the citizens are the audience, critics, and sometimes unwitting players in the grand theatre of Athenian democracy. But back to your day. As you weave through the crowd, the sense of fresh produce, spices, and, yes, the less pleasant aroma of livestock fill your nostrils. You're not just here to shop, you're here to be seen, to engage, to be part of the living, breathing organism that is Athens. This morning routine isn't just about buying food, it's about affirming your place in this vibrant, chaotic society. In this world, currency isn't just coins, it's reputation, rhetoric, and relationships. Every interaction is a potential transaction, whether you're bartering for bread or debating philosophy. And while the romantic image of Athens as a cradle of democracy persists, the reality is a bit more grounded. It's a city where power dynamics are constantly at play, where every decision, from breakfast to political discourse, is loaded with implications. So as you finish your morning in the agora, remember, every loaf of bread, every sip of wine, and every conversation is a thread in the rich tapestry of Athenian life. It's a world where the mundane and the monumental blend seamlessly, creating a city that's as flawed as it is fascinating. And as you move on with your day, you're not just living history, you're part of it, shaping it with every step you take. As the morning bustle of the agora fades into the background, you make your way toward the panics, the very heart of Athenian democracy. It's an uphill trek, both literally and metaphorically, as this is where the citizens of Athens come to voice their opinions, cast their votes, and occasionally hurl insults. If you thought the marketplace was lively, welcome to the assembly, a grand circus of democracy where the stakes are as high as a philosopher's beard. The Pnyx is a natural amphitheatre carved into a hill, offering panoramic views of the city, and it's here that you'll find democracy in its rawest form. Picture this, about 6,000 citizens required to make any decision official, a quorum that could rival any modern concert crowd. But let's be honest, getting that many people to agree on anything is akin to herding cats, especially when everyone has a strong opinion. Here's a fun fact. Only male citizens over the age of 18 can participate. So, if you're a woman, a slave, or a foreigner, congratulations. You're excluded from this democratic jamboree. The ideal of equality? More like a mirage. But hey, at least the men get their say, right? It's a sobering reminder that the Athenian version of democracy had more exclusions than a nightclub on a Saturday night. You might think that with such limited participation, decisions would come swiftly. Think again. The assembly is a cacophony of voices, each one trying to outshout the other. Picture a modern debate, but without microphones, and with a lot more gesticulating. It's chaotic, it's loud, and it's messy, just like democracy should be. Take a moment to appreciate the logistics here. Imagine trying to communicate complex political strategies without the aid of PowerPoint or a PA system. Speakers have to rely on the natural acoustics of the hillside and the sheer power of their lungs. If you're a demagogue with a penchant for theatrics, this is your stage. And speaking of characters, let's not forget that this is where the legendary Pericles often held court, swaying the masses with his oratory skills that could make a Spartan swoon. Now, the agenda isn't just about who gets to speak the loudest. Key issues like war, trade agreements, and the allocation of resources are all on the docket. The fate of the city often hinges on the decisions made here. Remember, this is a city that thrives on its reputation for intellect and rhetoric. The ability to persuade is as crucial as the sword, and sometimes even more so. But let's get back to the reality check. The romantic vision of Athenian democracy as a seamless symphony of civic engagement conveniently glosses over the discordant notes. Corruption and bribery are as much a part of the landscape as the olive trees. Votes can be influenced by the promise of silver or the threat of ostracism, a political exile that could last a decade. Talk about cutting someone out of your social circle. Even the act of voting isn't as straightforward as it sounds. Forget electronic ballots or even paper slips. Here, decisions are often made by a show of hands or by casting pebbles into urns. It's democracy by stony means, quite literally. And while it's tempting to view this as quaint, it's also a stark reminder of how fragile the democratic process can be. As the assembly unfolds, you can't help but notice the palpable tension. Every speech is a high-wire act, every decision a potential powder keg. This is where alliances are forged and broken, where the future of Athens is continually reimagined. It's a reminder that democracy isn't just a system, it's an ongoing conversation, one that requires constant vigilance and participation. But let's not get too misty-eyed. The exclusion of women and slaves serves as a glaring contradiction to the ideal of democratic equality. It's a harsh reality that underscores the limitations of the Athenian model. The absence of these voices means that the assembly is a chorus missing entire sections, a symphony without its full orchestra. As the assembly adjourns for the day, you're left with a sense of awe and frustration. Awe at the sheer audacity of attempting self-governance in such a tumultuous environment, and frustration at the inequities that persist. This is the paradox of Athenian democracy, a bold experiment that's simultaneously groundbreaking and deeply flawed. So, as you make your way back down the hill, remember that you've just witnessed history in action. It's a messy, imperfect process, but it's also a testament to the enduring human desire for self-determination. And while the Phoenix may be silent now, the echoes of today's debates will resonate far beyond the hills of Athens, shaping the world in ways both seen and unseen. Welcome to the wild world of ancient democracy, where every voice matters, except, of course, when it doesn't. As you descend from the Phoenix, the echoes of democratic debate still ringing in your ears, it's time to shift gears and head to one of the pillars of Athenian life, the gymnasium. And no, this isn't your modern-day sweat-drenched fitness centre filled with treadmills and protein shakes. This is where the Athenians perfected the art of balancing brawn with brains, a place that would make even Arnold Schwarzenegger pause to ponder a philosophical quandary. Welcome to the gymnasium, where the pursuit of excellence in both body and mind is not just encouraged but expected. Picture this, a sprawling complex where young men, and occasionally older ones who refuse to let go of their glory days, gather to train. But here's the twist. It's not just about chiseling abs and bulking up those biceps. The gymnasium is also an intellectual hub, a place where thoughts are as rigorously flexed as muscles. Now, let's debunk a little myth here. The romantic image of the Greeks as the epitome of physical perfection often glosses over some gritty realities. Yes, they were obsessed with physical excellence, but this wasn't just vanity. In a society where war was as common as sunburns in the Mediterranean, being fit was a survival tactic. The hoplite phalanx didn't win battles with philosophical debates after all. So, when you see these ancient athletes training, remember, they're not just working on their beach bodies, they're preparing for the battlefield. The gymnasium is a microcosm of Greek duality, the seamless blend of physical prowess and intellectual curiosity. And while the art of sculpting the body is on full display, the real magic happens in the conversations that swirl around like a tempest of ideas. Think of it as the ancient world's version of a TED Talk, but with more sand and sweat. Here, future philosophers and statesmen hone their rhetorical skills, engaging in discussions that range from ethics to politics to the meaning of life itself. And if you think this sounds like a lot of hot air, consider this. Some of the greatest minds of the era, like Plato and Aristotle, frequented these very spaces. Conversations here could shape philosophies that would echo through history. It's a reminder that the gymnasium is not just a breeding ground for athletes, but also a crucible for thinkers. This is where the seeds of Western philosophy are sown, nurtured by the fertile soil of debate and discourse. In terms of economics, the gymnasium is more than just a playground for the privileged. It's an institution that reflects the social and class dynamics of Athens. Access isn't universal. Membership often requires financial means, limiting it to the upper echelons of society. And while this might sound elitist, it underscores a harsh truth. In Athens, as in much of the ancient world, your wealth often dictated your access to education and physical training. So, while the gymnasium is a symbol of Athenian culture, it's also a stark reminder of its inequalities. But let's talk about the gymnasium's cultural significance. In Athens, the concept of arete, or excellence, is a civic duty. It's not enough to be just a soldier or a scholar. You need to strive for perfection in both. The gymnasium is where this ideal is put into practice. Here, young men learn the importance of balance, of not just excelling in physical contests, but also in the arena of ideas. It's a holistic approach to education that modern systems could take a leaf from. And speaking of contests, let's not forget the athletic competitions that form a major part of gymnasium life. These aren't your casual Sunday league games, they're intense, often brutal displays of skill and strength. From wrestling to pancration, a no-holds-barred combat sport that makes UFC look tame. These events are both entertainment and a proving ground for warriors. Winning brings glory not just to the individual but to their entire city-state, making these contests a matter of civic pride. But don't let the romanticism of athletic glory distract you from the underlying realities. The gymnasium, like any institution, is also a venue for political maneuvering and social networking. It's where alliances are forged, where young men from powerful families rub shoulders and exchange ideas. It's a reminder that in Athens the personal is always political, and every interaction is a potential step up the social ladder. So as you wander through the gymnasium, taking in the sights and sounds of bodies in motion and minds at work, remember that you're witnessing a cornerstone of Athenian life. It's a place where the boundaries between physical and intellectual pursuits blur, creating a unique cultural landscape that values both equally. And while the romantic image of the gymnasium might evoke visions of heroic athletes and wise philosophers, the reality is a bit more complex. It's a stage where the ideals of Greek society are both celebrated and challenged, where the pursuit of excellence is both a noble endeavour and a reflection of societal inequalities. As the afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the sand, you can't help but feel a sense of awe at the duality of it all. Here, in the heart of Athens, the gymnasium stands as a testament to the enduring quest for arete, a pursuit that, while noble, is never without its contradictions. And as you leave this hive of activity, you're left pondering the delicate balance between body and mind, a balance that the Athenians sought with fervour and, at times, folly. So, onward you go, with the echoes of philosophical debates and the rhythmic thud of training still resonating in your mind. You've seen the passion and the imperfections, the idealism and the inequities. And as your day continues, you carry with you the realization that in this ancient world, as in ours, the pursuit of excellence is a journey fraught with complexity, where the path to greatness is as muddled as it is magnificent. As you leave the gymnasium, the sun begins its slow descent, turning the sky into a canvas of orange and pink, nature's own fireworks display. You've walked with the Athenians through their bustling agora, climbed the heights of democracy at the Pnyx, and witnessed the dual pursuits of body and mind at the gymnasium. Now, it's time to stroll through the streets of Athens as they transform under the twilight, revealing the stark economic contrasts that define this ancient city. Let's begin with a dose of reality. Athens, the grand stage of democracy and intellect, is also a city of glaring wealth disparities. If you're expecting a classless utopia, prepare for a wake-up call as cold as the Aegean. Wealth here isn't just a number in your bank account. It's a ticket to influence, power, and a more comfortable life. The rich live in sprawling homes adorned with frescoes and mosaics, while the poor often cram into cramped quarters that make a modern studio apartment look palatial. This is a city where the wealthy might enjoy a daily banquet, complete with imported delicacies like Egyptian figs or Sicilian cheese, while the less fortunate are counting every obol just trying to keep bread on the table. Speaking of bread, that staple of Athenian life, remember it costs about 1 obol, the daily earning of a common labourer. And that's if you're lucky enough to find work. In a city of roughly 300,000 people, only about 30,000 are full citizens with voting rights, leaving a massive population of women, slaves, and metics, resident foreigners, scrambling for economic crumbs. Athens' economy is a complex beast, driven by trade, craftsmanship, and the silver mines of Laurium, an economic lifeline that keeps the city's coffers jingling. Yet, despite this wealth, the city is a mosaic of economic disparity. Trade is the lifeblood of Athens, with the port of Piraeus acting as the vital artery. Here, ships laden with grain from the Black Sea, wine from Chios, and pottery from the city's own kilns come and go with the tides. The Athenians are master traders, their networks stretching across the Mediterranean like an ancient LinkedIn, yet the fruits of this trade aren't evenly distributed. In this bustling trade hub, wealth doesn't just trickle down, it sometimes evaporates like rain in the summer sun. The wealthiest Athenians enjoy the best of everything: education, food, and even justice. The courts, while theoretically open to all, often tilt in favour of those who can afford the best rhetoric. Yes, in Athens, even justice has a price tag, and a silver tongue often weighs heavier on the scales than truth. Now, let's debunk a myth that keeps cropping up like a bad penny: the idea that Athens was a society of equals, a democratic wonderland where everyone had a say. The reality? More like a members-only club where the bouncer is a strict patriarchal gatekeeper. Women, slaves, and metics, the backbone of the economy, are excluded from the democratic process. They can't vote, hold office, or even own property in their own names. In short, they're the silent majority in this so-called cradle of democracy. Yet, despite these restrictions, the contributions of these groups are immense. Slaves run households and shops, power the economy, and even serve in the army. Metics, though barred from citizenship, often become wealthy merchants, vital to the city's prosperity. Women manage homes and estates, their labour unseen but essential. It's a reminder that the romantic image of Athenian democracy leaves out the majority who live in its shadow. As you walk through the streets, the night air filling with the sense of cooking fires and the murmur of evening gatherings, you can't help but notice how wealth shapes every aspect of life. The wealthy sit in courtyards, sipping on the finest wines, their conversations drifting into the night like the smoke from their lamps. Meanwhile, the poor gather in small groups, sharing stories and perhaps a diluted cup of wine, their laughter a counterpoint to the hum of the city. This economic divide isn't just about who gets the bigger slice of the pie. It's about access. Access to education, to political influence, to the very fabric of society. The rich send their sons to study under philosophers, while the poor make do with whatever scraps of knowledge they can glean. The economic realities of Athens are a tapestry woven with threads of ambition, opportunity, and inequality. But don't let this harsh reality douse the allure of Athens. The city is a marvel, a place of extraordinary cultural and intellectual achievements. It's just that its golden glow sometimes casts long shadows. As the streets grow quieter, and the city prepares for another day of bustling trade and philosophical debate, you're left with a sense of awe at the complexity of Athenian life. It's a city of contradictions, where the ideals of democracy and equality are continually tested against the harsh realities of economic and social disparities. So as you wander through the dimly lit streets, the sounds of Athens fading into the night, remember that this city is more than its myths. It's a living, breathing organism, vibrant and flawed, a testament to the highs and lows of human ambition. And as the night deepens, Athens stands as a reminder that the pursuit of perfection is never without its shadows, and that the quest for a fair society is as ancient as the stones beneath your feet. And now, as the night fully embraces Athens, it's time to delve into the final act of your Athenian day, the symposium. Ah, the symposium. A word that conjures images of intellectual giants sipping wine and solving the world's problems while reclining on luxurious couches. But let's not get carried away with the romanticism just yet. Beneath the polished veneer of these gatherings lies a tangled web of culture, politics, and a fair bit of debauchery. Picture yourself stepping into a symposium, the Greek term for this social institution, which literally translates to drinking together. It's both an art form and a battleground of wits, where the evening's main event is a mixture of philosophical debates and, let's face it, a drinking game that would make a college frat party look tame. The setting is intimate. Think a cosy room adorned with cushioned couches arranged around a central table. The air is thick with the heady aroma of wine mixed with the faint scent of incense burning in the corner. Candles flicker, casting dancing shadows that seem to animate the painted figures on the walls. Here, the wine flows as freely as the ideas. But don't get the wrong idea. This isn't about mindless inebriation. The wine is deliberately diluted, a practice that might disappoint modern connoisseurs but was crucial in avoiding the descent into outright drunken chaos. The goal is to loosen tongues, not tie them. After all, a symposium is a cerebral carnival where the wine serves as both social lubricant and truth serum. The guest list is exclusive wealthy citizens, influential metics, and intellectual elites who can afford the luxury of leisure. Women, if present, are typically heterae courtesans skilled in conversation and music. adding a layer of complexity to the evening's dynamics. These women, unlike the wives and daughters confined to domestic spheres, wield influence through their wit and charm, playing the part of both muse and participant. As the music begins, the conversations meander through topics as varied as the stars above: politics, philosophy, poetry, and love. It's a testament to the Greek belief in balance, the ideal of a sound mind in a sound body, even if that mind is at the moment slightly tipsy. The symposium becomes a theatre where the Athenians perform their cultural and intellectual prowess, each participant a player in this intricate dance of words. But let's debunk a common myth. While these gatherings are often idealized as the pinnacle of intellectual discourse, they're also rife with the same human foibles we see today: ego, envy, and a dash of hubris. The discussions might start with high-minded ideals, but they can quickly devolve into verbal sparring matches, with each participant eager to prove their rhetorical mettle. It's a reminder that the Athenians, despite their lofty ideals, were just as prone to the pitfalls of pride as anyone else. Economically, the symposium is a microcosm of the wider inequalities in Athens. The ability to host or attend such gatherings is a privilege reserved for the affluent. The cost of the wine alone, often imported from places like Chios or Lesbos, could be staggering, not to mention the expense of hiring musicians or hetarai. For the poor, such opulence is a distant fantasy, a stark contrast to their daily struggle for survival. Yet, the symposium is also a space where social hierarchies can momentarily blur. Here, a philosopher might hold court alongside a wealthy merchant, their social status temporarily set aside in favor of intellectual prowess. It's a fascinating paradox, an exclusive club where the currency is not only wealth, but wisdom. And while the barriers of class and gender are ever present, the symposium offers a tantalizing glimpse of a society that values ideas as much as material wealth. As the night wears on, the discussions grow more animated, buoyed by the wine and the convivial atmosphere. Games are played, songs are sung, and for a few hours the world outside fades away. It's a seductive blend of camaraderie and competition, where the participants are both allies and adversaries in the pursuit of truth, or at least their version of it. So what's the takeaway from this nightly ritual? The symposium is a reflection of the Athenian soul, a place where the pursuit of knowledge is intertwined with the pleasures of life. It's a celebration of human curiosity, a testament to the power of discourse, and a reminder that beneath the layers of history, people are driven by the same desires and insecurities that shape us today. As the night winds down and the guests begin to depart, you're left with a sense of the symposium's dual nature. It's both a stage for intellectual exploration and a mirror of society's inequalities. In this space, myths and realities blend seamlessly, revealing the complex tapestry of Athenian life. And as you step back into the cool night air, the echoes of laughter and debate still lingering in your mind, you can't help but ponder the legacy of this ancient world. Athens, with all its contradictions, has left an indelible mark on history, a testament to the human spirit's relentless pursuit of excellence, even amidst its own imperfections. So, as you stroll through the quiet streets, the Acropolis illuminated against the night sky, remember that you've walked in the footsteps of giants. You've explored a world of ideas and ideals, where the boundaries between myth and reality are as fluid as the wine that fueled those legendary symposia. And as the first light of dawn begins to break over the horizon, you carry with you a newfound appreciation for the complexity of history, a tapestry woven with threads of ambition, intellect, and the eternal quest for understanding. In the bustling bazaars and arid landscapes of ancient Persia, around 1500 BCE, there was something more than just camels and spices trading hands. Ideas were the real currency, and among them was a concept that would shape the religious landscape for millennia: Zoroastrianism. It wasn't just a faith, it was an all-encompassing worldview delivered by a prophet named Zoroaster, who, quite frankly, might have had a better PR team than most modern startups. Zoroastrianism didn't just drop out of the sky fully formed. It was a product of its time, a response to the chaotic polytheism of the era, much like how we today try to simplify our cluttered digital lives with Marie Kondo's "Does this spark joy?" mantra. Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra if you're feeling fancy, was not content with the idea of a confusing pantheon. Instead, he introduced a streamlined cosmic battle that could be summed up as Ahura Mazda versus Angra Mainyu, the ultimate good versus evil showdown. Ahura Mazda, the wise lord, wasn't just a celestial being lounged out on a cloud. He was the embodiment of order, truth, and light. You could think of him as the original beacon of hope long before Batman's signal was ever a twinkle in Gotham's eye. On the flip side, Angra Mainyu, or Ahriman, was the spirit of chaos and darkness, probably the guy you'd blame when you stubbed your toe in the middle of the night. This dualism wasn't just spiritual mumbo-jumbo. It was a mirror reflecting the human condition, a cosmic-scale depiction of the daily battle between the desire to hit snooze and the urge to get up and seize the day. This celestial conflict spilled over into the daily grind of every Zoroastrian's life, shaping rituals and routines as surely as the sun rose in the east. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that your mundane choices were part of an epic narrative. Should you recycle that papyrus scroll? Better do it, because Ahura Mazda's counting on you to keep things tidy. Every action had cosmic significance, from the way you tended your fire, the sacred symbol of Ahura Mazda's light, to how you treated your neighbor. You didn't just ignore the guy whose donkey blocked your path, you were supposed to exhibit ashak, or righteousness, which was basically Zoroastrianism's way of saying, "Be cool, man." And let's not forget the rituals. Zoroastrian ceremonies were where theology met theatre. Fire temples weren't just places of worship. They were the ancient world's version of a high-stakes drama, complete with sacred flames that never went out, symbolizing the eternal fight against darkness. Priests, known as magi, would recite the Gathas, Zoroaster's hymns, which were like the Billboard Top 40 of spiritual tracks, all while maintaining a strict level of cleanliness. Ritual purity was a big deal. If you thought your boss was strict about office tidiness, you clearly haven't met a Zoroastrian priest. This all sounds epic and a bit exhausting, right? Well, the stakes were high. The idea was that each individual's actions contributed to the larger cosmic balance. In today's terms, imagine if each of your emails at work directly impacted the stock market. That's some serious pressure, and it's no wonder Zoroastrians were a conscientious bunch. Despite its ancient origins, the echoes of Zoroastrianism can be heard in modern times, particularly in how it influenced other major religions. Its concepts of heaven, hell, and a final judgment day were revolutionary and would later be incorporated into the theological frameworks of Christianity and Islam. It's like Zoroaster was the original influencer, setting trends that would go viral across centuries. So, as the sun set over the ancient Persian horizon and the fires in the temples flickered against the encroaching darkness, the Zoroastrians understood that their rituals were more than just rote tradition. They were acts of cosmic significance, a daily affirmation of their commitment to siding with the light in a world that often felt engulfed by shadows. In essence, Zoroastrianism was a lifestyle choice, a spiritual Fitbit reminding its followers to strive for a better tomorrow. And while the ancient world may seem distant and alien, the struggle between order and chaos, light and dark, feels all too familiar. Whether it's balancing work emails with yoga classes or choosing between Netflix and an early bedtime, the dualistic dance continues. And now, speaking of balance, let's throw a spotlight on the fiery heart of Zoroastrianism, the fire temples. Think of these sacred spaces as the ultimate keep the flame alive challenge, but with much higher stakes than a reality show. Here, fire wasn't just a practical light source or a way to cook your kebabs. It was the blazing symbol of purity and truth itself, a direct line to Ahura Mazda. You could say these temples were the spiritual hotspots of their time, where the divine and the earthly met in a perpetual dance of flickering flames. But don't let the poetic imagery fool you into thinking it was all ethereal and mystical. Keeping a fire burning 24/7 was as much about logistics as it was about spirituality. Let's be real, maintaining an eternal flame required a serious wood budget and a dedicated crew of fire tenders, or athravants, who were essentially the ancient equivalent of IT support always on call, ensuring the divine connection remained strong and stable. Picture them, perpetually vigilant, adding logs like they were clocking in overtime and keeping the sacred embers from sputtering out like a disappointing TikTok trend. However, the economic implications of these fire temples go beyond just buying kindling. They were central to the social and economic fabric of the community. The temples created jobs, stimulated local economies, and served as hubs of social life. They were the OG community centers, where people gathered not just for worship, but for social functions, a bit like a cosmic town hall. And let's not forget the priests, those ancient spin doctors who managed to convince everyone that the smoke from the fire was basically a divine DM from Ahura Mazda himself. These magi, with a flair for drama and a knack for persuasion, were the original influences, ensuring the Zoroastrian message stayed hotter than a midsummer day in Persepolis. Now, let's bust a common myth. These fire temples weren't just for the elite. Sure, the bigwigs of society had their own VIP sections, but the temples were surprisingly egalitarian for their time. They welcomed everyone from the local fishmonger to the high-ranking satrap, all coming together under the shared belief that fire could purify the spirit and keep the cosmic scales tipped in favor of good. It was a rare blend of spiritual democracy, a place where the class system briefly took a back seat to the greater cosmic order. But every heavenly belief system has its earthly challenges, and Zoroastrianism was no exception. The reality of keeping an eternal flame alight meant dealing with mundane issues like wood scarcity and the occasional rebellious youth who tried to sneak a peek behind the sacred curtain. And amidst all this, the priests had to maintain the public's faith, a delicate act of balancing devotion and practicality, much like trying to keep a New Year's resolution past January. The significance of fire also translated into a slew of rituals that regulated everything from birth to death. Want to get married in ancient Persia? Better make sure there's a fire burning bright, symbolizing the purity and legitimacy of the union. Got a funeral to attend? The fire was there too, guiding the soul on its journey. In every ritual, fire was the unifying element, a constant reminder of the eternal struggle between order and chaos. It's as if the Zoroastrians understood that life, with all its unpredictability, was a bit like a campfire, beautiful, dangerous, and in need of constant attention. And speaking of attention, the economic and social roles of these rituals can't be overstated. In a time when most people couldn't read or write, the oral tradition of reciting hymns and prayers was vital for preserving culture and knowledge. These rituals were not just religious observances, but also educational sessions, teaching the community about morality, ethics, and the importance of keeping your spiritual house in order. If you think about it, the priests were the ancient world's answer to TED Talks, delivering wisdom with a side of spirituality, only with more incense and fewer PowerPoint slides. In the grand tapestry of Zoroastrianism, fire temples were the threads that held everything together, binding the community in shared belief and purpose. They were the beating heart of the religion, a place where the divine and mortal converged in a blaze of glory, and while the flames have long since dimmed, the echo of those ancient rituals continues to flicker in the background of history, a testament to the enduring power of light in the face of darkness. As we delve deeper into the Zoroastrian way of life, it's clear that these rituals were more than just spiritual exercises. They were a way to navigate the complexities of ancient Persian society, where the divine was always a breath away and every action had cosmic repercussions. The next time you light a candle or sit by a campfire, remember those ancient priests, tirelessly tending their eternal flames, ensuring the balance of the universe one log at a time. But don't get too comfortable, the story's just heating up, and there's still much more to uncover. As the Zoroastrians tended their eternal flames, let's pivot to another sort of firestorm, the Zoroastrian calendar. Strap in, folks, because this ancient timekeeping system was the kind of scheduling nightmare that even Google Calendar would struggle to manage. Imagine, if you will, a calendar with 12 months of 30 days each. So far, so good, right? But wait, there's more. To make the math work, since 12x30 only equals 360, not quite enough for a full solar year, they tossed in a few extra days at the end. These weren't your average bonus days. They were like those unexpected holidays that pop up and make you question all your life choices. Now, before you start thinking that the Zoroastrians were just bad at math, remember that their calendar had its own logic. It was based on the ancient Persian understanding of astronomy, which, for its time, was pretty advanced. You see, the Zoroastrian year was deeply tied to agricultural cycles. Those extra days, known as the Gatha days, were a time for reflection, not unlike how we use the downtime between Christmas and New Year's to ponder gym memberships we won't use. This was a period to step back, connect with the spiritual side, and maybe even breathe a sigh of relief that you survived another orbit around the sun. But let's talk about the real-world chaos this calendar could cause. First off, agricultural planning was an ever-present challenge. Farmers had to be in sync with the cosmos to ensure their crops thrived. Picture a farmer scratching his head, trying to figure out whether he should plough his field or wait for the celestial thumbs up. The stakes were high miss, a planting window, and say goodbye to the season's crops. In a society where food security was as precarious as a house of cards, the calendar was both a guide and a gamble. Socially, this calendar was like trying to organize a surprise party for a friend with an unpredictable schedule. Imagine planning weddings, festivals, or trade expeditions when your year keeps throwing curveballs at you. These were the original daylight saving time shenanigans, but with far higher stakes than just missing an hour of sleep. The Zoroastrians had to juggle religious observances, agricultural tasks, and social events without the luxury of a smartphone alert to remind them. And speaking of reminders, let's not forget the priests, those celestial project managers who had to keep everything running smoothly. Their role extended beyond leading rituals. They were the custodians of time, the ones who ensured that the sacred calendar aligned with the cosmic order. In a way, they were like the original IT department, troubleshooting divine misalignments and making sure the cosmic clock ticked just right. Their job was no walk in the park, especially when you consider the pressure of maintaining a calendar that was both spiritually and practically significant. But here's the kicker. Despite its complexity, the Zoroastrian calendar managed to persist, adapting and evolving over time. It's a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the ancient Persians, who managed to keep their society ticking along in harmony with the stars. The calendar was more than just a tool. It was a reflection of their worldview, a blend of astronomy, agriculture, and spirituality that defined their existence. In comparing this to our modern scheduling woes, it's clear that while our tools have evolved, the struggle to balance cosmic order and daily chaos remains. Just think of how daylight saving time still manages to throw us into a tizzy twice a year, despite being armed with smartphones and digital reminders. The Zoroastrian calendar may have been a puzzle, but it was a puzzle that connected the people to the heavens above and the earth below. It was a reminder that, sometimes, the most complex systems are also the most human, reflecting our endless quest to make sense of a world that often refuses to be neatly organized. As we wrap up our jaunt through the Zoroastrian calendar, consider this. Every tick of the cosmic clock was a reminder of humanity's enduring quest for order amidst chaos. Each day, each month, was a chance to realign with the divine, to ensure that the cosmic balance tilted ever so slightly towards the light. And while today's calendars might be more precise, the ancient Zoroastrians teach us a valuable lesson in embracing the unpredictability of time. After all, in the grand scheme of things, it's not just about counting the days, but making the days count. Stay tuned, because there's more to uncover in the intricate tapestry of Zoroastrian life. If you think managing a calendar with missing days was a challenge, just wait until you see how Zoroastrianism was wielded like a diplomatic sword by the Achaemenid rulers. Enter the political powerhouse of the ancient world, the Achaemenid Empire. It wasn't just about conquering lands and collecting taxes. It was about weaving a tapestry of faith and governance that would make Machiavelli's head spin. Picture Cyrus the Great, striding across the vast landscapes of his empire, not just as a military genius, but as a religious tactician par excellence. Cyrus wasn't your average conqueror with a one-size-fits-all approach to control. He understood that religion could be the glue to hold diverse peoples together in a sprawling empire that stretched over 5.5 million square kilometers. That's right, folks. Cyrus wasn't merely content with being called great because of his military conquests. He was the original master of the soft power strategy, artfully blending Zoroastrian tenets with local customs to keep the peace and the taxes rolling in. Now, let's talk about myth-busting. The romantic image of Cyrus as a benevolent ruler who respected all religions is a bit like imagining a lion as a vegan. Was he tolerant? Sure, but it's worth noting that tolerance often came with political savvy. Zoroastrianism became a state religion under his rule, and while it didn't demand conversion at sword point, it was certainly encouraged. The truth is, Cyrus's embrace of Zoroastrianism was as much about consolidating power as it was about spiritual enlightenment. He used it to legitimize his rule, presenting himself as the chosen protector of Ahura Mazda's divine order. Fast forward to Darius I, Cyrus's successor, who took this politico-religious strategy and ran with it like a marathoner on steroids. Darius wasn't just building an empire, he was crafting a narrative. He depicted himself as the divine ruler, a king by the grace of Ahura Mazda. His inscriptions, such as the famous Behistun inscription, were like ancient press releases, etched into rock for all eternity. These declarations weren't just about boasting, they were about shaping public perception in an empire where distance and diversity could quickly become chaos. Darius's reign saw the construction of Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, which was practically a Zoroastrian theme park. Imagine opulent halls, grandiose staircases, and columns reaching towards the heavens, all designed to reflect the glory of Ahura Mazda and, by extension, Darius himself. But here's where reality checks in. Maintaining such structures required a hefty chunk of resources. The economic burden of building and sustaining these monumental projects was enormous, straining the empire's coffers like a teenager's shopping spree on a parent's credit card. Let's not forget how this all played out on the ground. The people, from the labourers to the soldiers, were living in a world where religion and politics were inseparable. Loyalty to the king was intertwined with divine favour, and disobedience wasn't just a political issue, it was a cosmic betrayal. But while the idea of divine rule makes for a good story, the practicalities were messier. Revolts and uprisings dotted the empire's landscape like acne on prom night, revealing the cracks in this facade of divine unity. The myth of the all-powerful, divinely ordained king is appealing, but let's face it, managing an empire of this scale was less about divine will and more about logistics. Think of the Persian Royal Road, an ancient highway stretching over 2,500 kilometers, facilitating trade, communication, and military movements. It was the ancient equivalent of the internet, connecting disparate parts of the empire, but it required constant maintenance and a workforce of epic proportions. The reality was that this well-oiled machine needed more than divine favor. It needed a bureaucracy that could rival any modern government. And let's talk about those wild claims that could have used an ancient PR team. Rulers like Darius didn't just rely on religious legitimacy. They actively spun tales of divine encounters and heavenly mandates. Imagine trying to convince a multi-ethnic empire in an era without social media that your rule was divinely sanctioned. It required more than a few stone carvings and royal decrees. It needed the ancient equivalent of a viral marketing campaign. These rulers were proto-influencers, crafting their narratives with the skill of a modern spin doctor. Yet, despite the mythos surrounding these rulers, their reliance on Zoroastrianism was not without its skeptics. Not everyone bought into the idea of divine rule, and dissent simmered beneath the surface. The truth was that behind the grand architecture and elaborate rituals lay a complex web of political maneuvering and economic challenges. It was a balancing act akin to juggling flaming swords while riding a unicycle. In analyzing the political power of Zoroastrianism during the Achaemenid Empire, one must appreciate both the legend and the reality. The rulers were astute in their manipulation of religious narratives to consolidate power, but they were also dealing with the gritty realities of empire building. As we look back on their legacy, it's clear that the divine right of kings was as much a political tool as it was a spiritual one. And while Cyrus and Darius might have needed an ancient PR team to manage their larger-than-life claims, their ability to wield religion as a governance tool remains one of history's more impressive feats. So, the next time you hear about the divine right of kings, remember the Achaemenid rulers who turned faith into an empire-wide strategy. Their story is a testament to the timeless art of blending politics with religion, proving that, while the names and faces may change, the dance between power and belief is as old as civilization itself. And speaking of timeless dances, there's still more to unravel in the saga of Zoroastrianism. So stay tuned as we explore the legacy of these ancient spin masters and the enduring impact of their divine narratives. As the Achaemenid rulers deftly wielded Zoroastrianism as their empire's secret weapon, they set into motion a ripple effect that would echo through the annals of history. It's as if Cyrus and Darius had unwittingly signed up to be the ancient world's trendsetters, casting a long shadow that would stretch far beyond their own dynastic ambitions. You see, Zoroastrianism didn't just fizzle out like last season's fashion, it left an indelible mark on the world's spiritual landscape, influencing the development of other major religions in ways that would make even the most seasoned religious studies professor raise an eyebrow. Take Christianity and Islam, for instance. Both faiths borrowed more than a page from the Zoroastrian playbook. Concepts like heaven and hell, an omnipotent God versus an evil adversary, and a final judgment day, those were all Zoroastrian staples long before they became popular in Sunday school curricula. It's like Zoroaster was the original creative director of the celestial narrative, sketching out the archetypal battle between good and evil that would captivate the human imagination for centuries. This cross-pollination of ideas wasn't a simple case of religious plagiarism, though. It was more akin to a cultural exchange program, where theological concepts were traded like exotic spices along the ancient Silk Road. Early Christian and Islamic thinkers found themselves grappling with the same existential dilemmas that Zoroastrianism addressed: how to reconcile the presence of evil in a world governed by a benevolent deity, or how to offer believers a sense of cosmic justice. Zoroastrianism provided a framework that resonated with these emerging faiths, much like how the latest viral meme can capture the zeitgeist of an entire generation. But the legacy of Zoroastrian rituals isn't confined to theological texts or the dusty annals of history. Some of those ancient practices have managed to hitch a ride through time, morphing and adapting to the whims of modern culture. Take the Zoroastrian New Year Nowruz, which is still celebrated today across Iran, Central Asia, and parts of the Middle East. It's a testament to the enduring appeal of Zoroastrianism's focus on renewal and rebirth, a reminder that even as the world changes, the desire for fresh beginnings remains constant. Imagine the ancient Persians marking the vernal equinox with feasts, bonfires, and the ceremonial cleaning of homes, all in the hope of welcoming prosperity and pushing out the darkness. Fast forward a few millennia, and you'll find that the spirit of Nowruz still lights up homes and hearts, proving that some traditions refuse to go gentle into that good night. And let's not forget the iconic Zoroastrian fire temples, which, while fewer in number today, still serve as potent symbols of the faith. While the logistics of maintaining an eternal flame might have been replaced by a more metaphorical interpretation, the core idea remains: light as a representation of truth and purity. In today's frenetic world, where misinformation can spread faster than a cat meme, the Zoroastrian emphasis on enlightenment and clarity feels particularly relevant. It's as if the ancient Zoroastrians foresaw our modern struggle to sift through the chaos and find a glimmer of truth in the digital age. But if we're talking about legacy, it's crucial to dig into why these rituals and ideas have such staying power. Perhaps it's because they address the perennial human quest for meaning amidst the chaos. The Zoroastrians understood that life is a series of choices, each with its own cosmic significance, a concept that resonates with our contemporary attempts to find purpose in the everyday grind. Whether it's deciding to recycle that soda can or choosing to be kind to a stranger, the echoes of Zoroaster's teachings remind us that our actions, however small, contribute to a larger cosmic narrative. So, what's the takeaway from this Zoroastrian saga? It's that ancient rituals and beliefs, far from being relics of a bygone era, continue to inform our modern lives in subtle yet profound ways. They remind us that the struggle between light and darkness, order and chaos, is as old as humanity itself, and while the specifics of Zoroastrian rituals might have evolved over time, their core message endures: that in a world fraught with uncertainty, our choices matter. They shape not only our destiny, but the world around us, reflecting a timeless truth that transcends the boundaries of culture and time. In closing, as the flickering flames of Zoroastrian fire temples cast their glow over the ancient Persian landscape, they illuminated more than just the physical world. They lit the way for future generations to navigate the complexities of existence, offering a framework to understand the dance between order and chaos. And while the Zoroastrians may not have had the luxury of modern technology or the convenience of a digital calendar, they left behind a legacy that continues to burn brightly in the hearts of those who dare to seek meaning in the midst of life's unpredictability. So, the next time you find yourself pondering the cosmic balance, remember the ancient Zoroastrians and their eternal fire, a testament to the enduring human spirit and our unyielding search for light in the darkness. Before the sun's even had a chance to peek over the horizon, you're already up and at 'em, ready to tackle another day in the Tudor kitchen. The roosters are still deciding whether to crow, but you don't have time to wait for their opinion. Welcome to the crack of dawn, 16th century style, where sleeping in is as mythical as the Loch Ness Monster. You shuffle into the kitchen, which is less a room and more a controlled chaos factory. Forget the sleek, minimalist designs of 21st century cooking shows. This place is a cacophony of clanging pots, sizzling fires, and the occasional yelp from the kitchen boy who just discovered why you don't get too close to the cauldron. The kitchen is the heart of the household, but it's more like the heart of a beast, constantly churning and demanding attention. You're not alone in this culinary madhouse. The hierarchy here is as rigid as the court etiquette at Hampton Court. At the top, you've got the master cook, the culinary equivalent of a rock star, wielding more authority in the kitchen than Henry VIII ever did over his wives. Then there's you, possibly a yeoman cook or a kitchen maid, depending on your lot in life. Below you, the kitchen boys, who are young, spry, and blissfully unaware of the long day ahead. Each has their task, creating a well-oiled machine that's anything but smooth. Your first mission, the fire. This isn't a flick the switch, instant heat kind of deal. No, you're wrestling with logs and kindling, coaxing flames to life like you're starring in a medieval survival show. Firewood is your bread and butter, or maybe more accurately, your bread and fire. A Tudor kitchen could burn through a staggering amount of wood just to keep the fires hot enough to cook for a household. We're talking hundreds of pounds a week, a small forest's worth if you've got a lord with a taste for banquets. Why does all this matter? Because without fire, you might as well be trying to cook with ice. It's the engine of the kitchen, powering everything from the morning pottage to the evening roast. And you thought your electric bill was bad? Try managing the wood supply for a Tudor manor. It's an economic balancing act, and the stakes are as high as the towering flames in the hearth. But let's talk logistics. Feeding a Tudor household isn't just about cooking, it's an exercise in medieval project management. Depending on the size of your employer's estate, you could be feeding anywhere from a dozen to over 100 mouths. It's a veritable feast every day, and each meal is a production worthy of its own marquee. You might not have spreadsheets, but you've got lists and the ever-reliable tally stick to keep track of supplies. Costs are no joke either. Bread, the staple of any meal, could run a family about 2 shillings a week, but if you're working in a wealthier household, the menu's more elaborate. Meat is a regular feature, and we're talking everything from beef to venison, with the odd swan thrown in for those special occasions. And don't forget the spices. They're worth their weight in gold, literally. A pound of saffron could set you back a small fortune, making it the Bitcoin of the Tudor kitchen. The hierarchy doesn't just stop with people. The food itself has its pecking order. Nobles get the choicest cuts, while the lower ranks make do with what's left. This isn't your farm-to-table restaurant. It's a stratified society expressed through dinner. But despite the inequalities, there's a certain beauty to the routine, a rhythm that, once you get the hang of it, feels as natural as breathing. Now, don't get swept away by romantic visions of Tudor life. The daily grind is just that, a grind. You're dealing with ingredients that would make a modern chef weep. No pre-packaged convenience, no refrigeration, and on top of that, you've got to worry about the odd rat making off with your stores. It's survival of the fittest, and sometimes the rodents are winning. Still, there's a sense of accomplishment. As the first rays of sunlight start filtering through the high windows, you've already achieved more than some people do all day. You've got the fires roaring, water boiling, and the first batch of bread rising. Breakfast is on its way, and with it, the promise of another day in the bustling, boisterous world of a Tudor kitchen. So, roll up those sleeves and get to it. There's no rest for the weary, and certainly none for a Tudor cook. Ready for a deep dive into the Tudor pantry? Let's unravel the culinary tapestry of 16th century England, where every meal was a statement of survival, status, and occasionally sheer audacity. The Tudor kitchen was a battleground of flavours, where staples and luxuries collided in a chaotic dance. First up, the humble grains. Bread was the backbone of the Tudor diet, much like Wi-Fi is for us today. It came in various forms, from the coarse, rye-infused trenchers for the common folk, to the refined white loaves gracing noble tables. Wheat was a prized commodity, and its price could swing like a Tudor mood. A bad harvest could send costs spiralling, leaving peasants grumbling over their gritty pottage. Yet, for the wealthy, it was a different ballgame. They flaunted their status with manchet bread, the whitest of the white, a symbol of their wealth and refined taste buds. Now, let's spice things up a bit, literally. Spices were the rock stars of the Tudor kitchen, imported from far-off lands like the culinary equivalent of a world tour. Saffron, cloves, cinnamon. They weren't just flavourings, they were declarations of affluence. A pound of pepper could cost you more than a week's wages for a labourer. These exotic spices were less about taste and more about showing off, like owning a luxury car you never drive. Speaking of extravagance, Tudor feasts were a spectacle of culinary bravado. Imagine dishes that were more dare than dinner. How about a roasted peacock, feathers reattached for dramatic flair, or a pie that released live birds when cut open? These were the Instagram moments of the Tudor era, minus the smartphones but with all the bragging rights. But let's not get too carried away with the pageantry. Henry VIII, the notorious gourmand, didn't actually invent the turkey leg as his dining staple. In reality, his meals were meticulously planned events showcasing his wealth and power. Sure, he indulged, but he wasn't slumped in his chair gnawing on game birds like some medieval caricature. His table was a kaleidoscope of meats and exotic dishes, each one a testament to England's far-reaching trade networks. For the average Tudor, however, the diet was a stark contrast. While the aristocrats were busy playing food poker with their loaded tables, the common folk subsisted on a simpler fare. Pottage, a stew-like concoction, was a daily staple, often made with whatever grains and vegetables could be scrounged up. Meat was a rare treat, and when it appeared it was likely salted or smoked to make it last longer. Forget about 5 a day, most Tudors were lucky to get any fresh produce, especially in winter. And then there's the myth of endless mead and ale flowing like rivers. While it's true that ale was a safer bet than water, thanks to questionable medieval plumbing, it wasn't a perpetual party. Most ale was small beer, low in alcohol, but crucial for hydration. The rich, meanwhile, could afford wine, imported at great expense from the continent, another feather in their cap of exclusivity. So, as you stoke the fires for breakfast, remember the Tudor kitchen was a world of contrasts. From the plain broth of the peasant to the opulent spreads of the nobility, food was a reflection of one's place in the social hierarchy. It was a time when what you ate could say more about you than the clothes you wore. And as the day unfolds, with its challenges and triumphs, you're not just cooking, you're participating in a rich tapestry of history where every meal is a story waiting to be told. Keep those flames roaring and your wits sharper than a Tudor dagger, because in this kitchen, the past is as alive as the sizzling of the morning's first rashers of bacon. As the morning's bacon sizzles away, you're reminded that this is just the calm before the storm. Midday in a Tudor kitchen is when things really get cooking, literally and figuratively. The fires are roaring, and now it's time to tackle the culinary marathon that will define your day. Those massive cauldrons aren't just for show, they're the workhorses of the kitchen, capable of boiling up to 40 gallons of stew or pottage at once. Imagine the Tudor equivalent of a slow cooker, except it could feed a small army and required the strength of Hercules to lift. Let's talk about the tools of your trade. Your kitchen arsenal is less Williams-Sonoma and more ye old hardware store. Knives of every shape and size, wooden spoons that double as cricket bats, and enormous ladles that could moonlight as shovels. And then there's the Tudor version of a blender, a mortar and pestle. It's your go-to for grinding spices, smashing herbs, or taking out your frustrations on a particularly stubborn clove of garlic. This isn't about convenience, it's about endurance. If you can pulverize peppercorns into dust with a rock, you're practically a kitchen superhero. Now, let's take a step back and ponder why your pantry looks the way it does. The dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s wasn't just a religious or political shake-up, it was an agricultural revolution. Monasteries were powerhouses of land management, and when Henry VIII decided he didn't need the Pope's approval or the monasteries themselves, he effectively uprooted the agricultural economy. This left a lot of land up for grabs, changing who grew what and for whom. Suddenly, the fields that once produced food for monks were being repurposed for cash crops, altering food availability across England. So if you're struggling to find barley or oats, you can thank Henry and his penchant for breaking with tradition. And speaking of breaking traditions, let's debunk some myths about food preservation. Forget the romantic notion of Tudor folk cheerfully salting and smoking their meats like artisanal hipsters. It was less about gourmet flavors and more about survival. Without the convenience of refrigeration, salting, smoking and drying were your best bets to keep food from turning into a science experiment. Salt was a prized commodity, not just for its flavor, but as a critical preservative. A household could go through several pounds of it yearly, which meant keeping it under lock and key, literally. It was so valuable that it could be used as currency in a pinch. And hygiene? Let's just say it's not Tudor England's strong suit. The idea of cleanliness was somewhat different back then, more about spiritual purity than physical. Kitchens were sweaty, smoky, and often a paradise for pests. Rats were as much a part of the cooking process as the cooks themselves, nibbling their way through stores of grain and leaving little gifts behind. Sure, you could set traps, but more often than not, it was a losing battle. The kitchen floor was probably straw-covered, swept occasionally but not sanitized by any modern standard. The best you could hope for was to keep things clean enough, a vague concept that would make a modern health inspector break into a cold sweat. But let's not dismiss the allure of Tudor cooking entirely. There's a certain romance in the communal nature of it all, the way every meal is a group effort, a dance of flames and flavors. The kitchen might be chaotic, but it's also alive, a place where social and economic boundaries blur over a shared meal. While you might not have the luxury of time-saving gadgets or pre-packaged ingredients, what you do have is a sense of accomplishment that comes from creating something extraordinary out of the ordinary. So as the afternoon sun casts long shadows across the kitchen floor, you're knee-deep in the day's main event. The meat has been roasting since morning, vegetables are being chopped with military precision, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafts through the air like a promise. It's a symphony of scents and sounds, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of those who keep the kitchen fires burning. And while the nobleman may dine on the finest fare, the real magic happens here, in the heart of the Tudor home, where each dish is a testament to the sweat and skill of its creator. As you stir the great cauldron, you realize that the kitchen is not just a place of work, it's a microcosm of Tudor society. Each ingredient tells a story of trade and conquest, each spice a whisper of distant lands. The kitchen is where cultures collide, where England's emerging global presence is felt in every pinch of pepper and saffron. It's a place where the political becomes personal, where the grand narratives of history are boiled down to their essence, simmering away in the pot. And so, as the midday heat begins to wane, you brace yourself for the final push. There's still much to be done, and though the day is far from over, there's a certain satisfaction in knowing that you're part of something enduring. The Tudor kitchen is a crucible of creativity and chaos, a testament to the eternal human spirit and its unyielding quest to feed both body and soul. So, tighten your apron and steady your hand. The next course is just around the corner, and history waits for no one. As the afternoon sun dips lower, casting a golden hue over the Tudor landscape, you're pulled into the world of the common folk, where the kitchen is less about grandeur and more about gritty survival. Forget the opulent halls of the nobility. This is where the real culinary innovation happens, born out of necessity and sheer determination. Let's talk economics, shall we? Being a lower-class cook in 16th century England is no walk in the park. It's more like a slog through a muddy field, both literally and figuratively. You're juggling fewer resources than a jester at court, and yet you've got to make meals stretch further than a knight's tale. The average peasant family subsisted on a meagre income, often less than 5 a year, which today wouldn't even get you a decent pair of shoes. So, when it comes to feeding a family, creativity is your best friend, and flour is your saving grace. Now, let's debunk a myth, the romantic notion of pastoral bliss, where peasants are eternally cheerful, frolicking in fields and dining on fresh produce. Reality check, most of the time, they're knee-deep in muck, trying to coax crops from tired soil. And that harvest? It's not a cornucopia of plenty. It's a mixed bag of whatever managed to survive the whims of the English weather. A bad season could mean famine, and suddenly your pottage is looking more like flavoured water with a side of desperation. Ah, pottage, the unsung hero of the Tudor diet. It's basically a catch-all stew that changes with the seasons and whatever's left in the larder. Got some barley? Toss it in. A few turnips that have seen better days? They'll do. It's the original stone soup, where every ingredient counts and nothing goes to waste. You've got to stretch those resources like they're made of elastic, and sometimes the most creative cooks can turn a few humble ingredients into a meal that's almost satisfying. But it's not just about what's in the pot, it's about who's around it. Cooking in a Tudor village is a communal affair, a far cry from the isolation of modern kitchens where it's just you, Netflix, and a microwave meal. Back then, meals were shared events, a chance to bond with neighbours and swap stories or complaints about the latest edict from the Crown. It's a social gathering as much as it is a necessity, a reminder that even in hardship there's strength in numbers. Economically speaking, these gatherings were also practical. Families pooled resources, which meant you could make that sack of flour stretch a little further, barter for some fresh eggs, or score a bit of ale to make the meal go down easier. It's the medieval potluck, where everyone brings what they can and no one leaves hungry, if they're lucky. So, why does all this matter? Because the communal kitchen is more than just a place to cook, it's a microcosm of Tudor society. It's where social bonds are forged and reinforced, where news travels faster than a royal decree, and where everyone knows that the village gossip is at least as reliable as any herald. It's the beating heart of the community, where the rhythm of life plays out in the clatter of pots and the murmur of shared stories. And let's not forget the role of women in this culinary dance. While history might have favoured the tales of knights and kings, the unsung heroines of the kitchen were the ones keeping the home fires burning. They were the project managers of the household, balancing limited resources with the deftness of a juggler. In a world where survival was a daily challenge, these women were the linchpins, the ones who could make a meal out of thin air and a prayer. Now, about those resources, they're as scarce as a sunny day in an English winter. Wheat and barley might be the backbone of your pottage, but they're also subject to the whims of the market. Prices fluctuate wildly, often driven by factors as far away as the political machinations in London or the latest skirmish with France. A crop failure can send prices soaring, turning basic sustenance into a luxury and leaving peasants scrambling for alternatives. And speaking of alternatives, let's address the role of foraging. While today's foodies might romanticize foraging as a quaint, organic pastime, for the Tudor peasant, it was often a necessity. Wild herbs, berries, nuts, anything that could be found in the hedgerows and fields was fair game. It was the original, locally sourced menu, though less about sustainability and more about survival. But beware, not all that glitters is gold, and not all that's green is edible. One wrong mushroom, and dinner could turn into a disaster of Shakespearean proportions. So, as the afternoon wears on and the shadows grow longer, you find yourself in the thick of it, literally. The fire's still crackling, the pot's still bubbling, and the kitchen's alive with the sounds of community. It's a place where every meal is a testament to resilience, where every shared loaf is a reminder that even in the toughest of times, there's warmth and comfort to be found in the simplest of meals. As you stir that pot of pottage one last time, you can almost hear the echoes of history in the sizzle and hiss. It's a story of endurance and ingenuity, of people who made do with what they had and found joy in the shared experience of a meal. And while the nobility might flaunt their feasts and fancy banquets, it's here, in the humble village kitchen, that the true spirit of Tudor England comes alive. So, lift that ladle high and savour the moment, because in a world of uncertainty, one thing's for sure, there's no place like home, and no meal like the one shared around the communal hearth. And just like that, another day in the Tudor kitchen draws to a close. But before you kick off those clogs and rest your weary bones, let's take a moment to appreciate the culinary innovations that emerged during this period of history. You see, the Tudor era wasn't just about surviving another day without setting the kitchen ablaze or dodging the occasional rat. It was a time of transformation in the culinary arts. First on the list of breakthroughs, the introduction of new ingredients from the New World. Picture this: tomatoes, potatoes, and maize arriving on English shores, courtesy of explorers like John Hawkins and Sir Francis Drake. These ingredients were initially met with skepticism. Some folks even thought tomatoes were poisonous. But once they caught on, they revolutionized the English diet, much like the smartphone revolutionized communication. Imagine the first time someone swapped their mundane pottage for a dish with a hint of tomato or a side of mashed potatoes. It was like discovering a culinary cheat code. But let's not forget the domestic innovations. The spit, for instance, was a game changer that turned meat roasting into an art form. Before its widespread use, roasting was a labor-intensive affair that required constant attention. The addition of mechanical spits, sometimes powered by dogs running on treadmills, meant that meat could be turned at a consistent speed, resulting in evenly cooked, succulent roasts. It was the 16th century version of set-it-and-forget-it cooking, minus the convenience of a timer. And while we're on the subject of roasting, let's tip our hats to the rise of sugar in Tudor kitchens. Sugar, once a luxury item reserved for the elite, began to trickle down to the masses, albeit in modest quantities. It was used to create sweets and pastries that dazzled the taste buds and showcased the cook's skill. The sugar sculptures and intricate desserts served at Tudor banquets were the Renaissance equivalent of a 5-star Instagram dessert post, eye-catching, ostentatious, and oh so desirable. Talk about a sugar rush that left a lasting imprint on culinary history. Now, let's consider the societal shifts at play. The dissolution of the monasteries had ripple effects that extended far beyond land distribution. It began to alter traditional cooking roles. With monasteries no longer controlling food production on vast tracts of land, opportunities arose for enterprising individuals to take up farming and food production. This laid the groundwork for a more market-oriented economy, where the exchange of goods wasn't solely dictated by feudal obligations. It was capitalism in its nascent form, stirring the pot of social and economic change. But hold on, there's a twist in the tale. As the evening shadows lengthen, it's worth pondering how much of this change truly permeated society. While innovations trickled down, the pace was glacial, and many remained stuck in the old ways, clinging to the familiar comforts of pottage and ale. The culinary chasm between the upper crust and the common folk remained as wide as ever. Despite the advent of new ingredients and methods, the average Tudor cook still grappled with the same old challenges: limited resources, fluctuating prices, and the constant juggling act of feeding a household on a shoestring budget. So, what does this mean for us today? In a world where food is often taken for granted, the Tudor kitchen serves as a poignant reminder of the timeless nature of culinary arts. Food has always been a unifying force, transcending social barriers and connecting people across generations. It's the great equalizer, the thing that brings us together around the table, whether we're sharing a pottage with neighbours or indulging in a lavish feast. As you finally hang up your apron, consider the legacy of the Tudor kitchen. It was a place of innovation and tradition, chaos and community, a crucible where the past and future mingled, simmering away in every pot and pan. And though the tools and ingredients may have changed, the essence of cooking remains a constant, a blend of creativity, resourcefulness, and resilience. So, as the stars twinkle overhead and the fire's embers slowly die, remember that every meal is a story, a connection to those who came before us. The Tudor kitchen may have been a place of struggle and strife, but it was also a testament to the enduring human spirit. And as you drift off to sleep, let these thoughts simmer, much like a well-cooked pottage, a gentle reminder that while the world around us may change, the simple joy of sharing a meal will forever remain timeless. Death in ancient Egypt was less of an end and more of a layover on the way to the next great adventure, like a cosmic road trip where the final destination was a paradise filled with eternal picnics and endless sunshine. To get there, though, you needed more than just a map. You needed the full Egyptian burial package, complete with mummification, organ jars, and enough natron to make the Dead Sea envious. First off, let's talk about mummification. When it came to preserving bodies, the Egyptians were the OG preservationists. They didn't just throw you in a tomb and call it a day. Oh no, they had a 70-day process designed to ensure your body was in mint condition for the afterlife. Talk about dedication. The process kicked off with the removal of organs, because who needs internal organs when you've got eternity to look forward to? The brain was yanked out through the nose with a hook. Yes, you heard that right, a hook. Clearly, someone decided that the brain was just extra baggage for the afterlife. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines were carefully extracted and stored in canopic jars, each guarded by one of the 4 sons of Horus. These jars were kind of like the Tupperware of ancient Egypt, keeping organs fresh for centuries. Next came the natron, a naturally occurring salt that was the unsung hero of the mummification process. It dried out the body faster than a summer in the Sahara. Picture natron as the ancient Egyptian version of silica gel packets. You know, those little things that come in your shoeboxes, but with a far more serious job. The body would be packed and covered with this stuff, left to marinate for about 40 days. After that, it was wrapped in linen, layer by layer, like the world's most morbid burrito. Now, let's not forget the economic side of this whole ordeal. Mummification wasn't just a spiritual practice, it was big business. Think of it as the ancient world's version of the funeral industry, complete with its own set of specialists. Professional embalmers, often priests, were the rock stars of their day, holding a monopoly on the secrets of eternal preservation. They worked in special workshops called pernefa, houses of beauty. The irony of the name is almost too perfect, given they were dealing with corpses all day. But this wasn't a cheap affair. A basic mummification could cost about 20 to bin a unit of weight used as currency, equivalent to a few weeks' wages for an average labourer. If you wanted the deluxe package, complete with extra trinkets and a snazzy sarcophagus, you'd better be ready to shell out some serious copper. For the pharaohs, cost was no object. They were the Bezos of the Nile, funding elaborate funerary projects that employed thousands. It's estimated that the Great Pyramid of Giza alone took about 20 years and up to 100,000 labourers to complete. Talk about job creation. The economic ripple effects of the burial industry were immense. From craftsmen carving intricate hieroglyphics to weavers spinning miles of linen, the business of death was a cornerstone of the Egyptian economy. It also reinforced the social hierarchy. Only the wealthy could afford the full mummy treatment, thereby securing their VIP pass to the afterlife. Meanwhile, the common folk had to settle for a more budget-friendly send-off, often just a shallow grave with a few grave goods for company. So why did they go to all this trouble? For the Egyptians, the afterlife was a continuation of this life, just with fewer mosquitoes and more leisure time. Death ceremonies were designed to ensure a smooth transition to this afterlife, where you'd hopefully avoid getting your soul devoured by Amut, the fearsome demoness with a lion's front, a hippopotamus's back, and a crocodile's head. A real triple threat, if there ever was one. This belief system wasn't just about personal eternity, it was a way to maintain cosmic order, or Marat. The pharaoh, as the living god, was responsible for upholding Marat both in life and death. In the end, the Egyptians' obsession with death and the afterlife was less morbid than it was a testament to their eternal optimism. They invested in death like people today invest in retirement plans with the hope of a heavenly payoff. And while the modern world may not believe in canopic jars and natron baths, the idea of planning for a better tomorrow is something we can all relate to, even if the Egyptians did take it to a whole new level. Now that we've got the basics of the Egyptian afterlife starter pack out of the way, let's shift gears to where the magic, or should I say, the masonry happens, the tombs themselves. We're talking grandiose, jaw-dropping, millennium-defying structures that still manage to leave modern architects scratching their heads. The Egyptians clearly had a flair for making their final resting places a cut above your average grave plot. Forget a headstone. They were more into entire complexes that screamed, "I may be dead, but look at my real estate." First up, the pyramids, those iconic, triangular symbols of ancient Egypt that have been inspiring awe and conspiracy theories alike. Most famously, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, is a masterclass in ancient engineering. Built around 2560 BCE for Pharaoh Khufu, this behemoth weighs in at a mind-boggling 575 million tons. That's 2.3 million stone blocks, each averaging a hefty 2.5 tons. And here we are, complaining about moving a couch. The romanticized image of pyramids as mystical structures built by enslaved masses is a narrative Hollywood loves, but the truth is more nuanced and, frankly, much more interesting. Recent archaeological evidence suggests the labourers were skilled workers, not slaves, who lived in nearby temporary cities. These workers were paid in bread and beer because why not make carbs and alcohol the currency of choice? Their diet was surprisingly balanced, featuring meat, vegetables, and pulses, which sounds more like a hipster brunch spot than an ancient worksite. The logistics of feeding and housing this workforce were as monumental as the construction itself. It's estimated that around 4,000 primary labourers were supported by an additional 16,000 to 20,000 secondary workers, making it one of the most significant employment projects of the ancient world. Take that modern infrastructure. Workers' villages, like the one found at Giza, offered decent living conditions, complete with bakeries, breweries and medical facilities. These weren't just mud huts. We're talking well-organised settlements that could rival the suburbs, minus the HOA fees. And speaking of logistics, constructing a pyramid wasn't just about stacking stones willy-nilly. It required precise astronomical alignment, architectural innovation, and a whole lot of manpower. The ancient Egyptians didn't have cranes or power tools, yet they managed to construct these awe-inspiring monuments with nothing more than copper tools, ropes, and sheer determination. Theories abound about how they pulled this off, from using massive ramps to the more out-there ideas involving alien intervention. Either way, it's a testament to their ingenuity that these structures have stood the test of time. But pyramids weren't the only game in town. Enter the Valley of the Kings, the ultimate necropolis for those who preferred their tombs with a bit more privacy and a lot more bling. Located on the west bank of the Nile, near Thebes, this royal cemetery was the final resting place for the who's who of Egyptian royalty during the New Kingdom 1570-1070 BCE. Unlike the pyramids, these tombs were hidden away in the cliffs, making them less visible but no less impressive. It's like the original gated community, complete with a prime location and a killer view. The Valley of the Kings was a logistical marvel in its own right. Over 60 tombs have been found, including the famous tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered by Howard Carter in 1922. While King Tut's tomb was relatively small, it was packed with treasures, a veritable Aladdin's cave of gold, jewellery and artefacts. Imagine the excitement of cracking open a tomb and finding it filled to the brim with bling. Talk about hitting the jackpot of archaeology. The construction of these tombs was an art form. Each was carved into the rock, with corridors and chambers meticulously planned to ensure maximum protection and maximum impressiveness. The walls were adorned with intricate hieroglyphics and vibrant paintings depicting scenes from the Book of the Dead, a kind of how-to guide for navigating the afterlife. These depictions were not just decorative, they were believed to be magical, ensuring the deceased had safe passage to the paradise of the Field of Reeds. A critical, yet often overlooked, aspect of these monumental projects is the economic engine that drove them. The construction of pyramids and royal tombs was a massive economic undertaking that involved not just builders, but also artisans, quarry workers, scribes, and a whole host of other specialists. The scale of these projects meant that they were a significant source of employment and economic activity, contributing to the prosperity and stability of the Egyptian state. Pharaohs were not just building tombs, they were investing in the nation's economy, creating jobs and stimulating trade networks that stretched across the ancient world. So, while the grandeur of Egyptian tombs captures our imagination, it's worth remembering that they were also massive economic and social endeavours. They reinforced the pharaoh's divine status and the belief in the afterlife, but they also kept the wheels of the economy turning. The pyramids and tombs were not just monuments to the dead, they were testimony to the living, a celebration of human achievement and a testament to the power of collaboration and innovation. And let's not forget the human element here. The people who built these wonders were not just nameless labourers, they were skilled craftspeople, masons and architects who left their mark on history through their work. Their stories may not be as well documented as those of the pharaohs they served, but their legacy is etched into the very stones of these timeless structures. They were the unsung heroes of ancient Egypt, proving that human ingenuity knows no bounds, even when faced with the seemingly impossible task of building a stairway to the stars. As we continue our journey through the sands of time, it's clear that these ancient builders laid the foundations not just for tombs and temples, but for a legacy that continues to inspire and intrigue us thousands of years later. So, next time you see a pyramid, remember, it's not just an ancient wonder, it's a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a symbol of our eternal quest to reach for the heavens, one stone at a time. Speaking of ancient wonders that stand the test of time, let's dive into the literary equivalent of the Great Pyramid, the Book of the Dead. This isn't your average beach read, folks. It's more like an existential IKEA manual for the soul, filled with spells and instructions to help the deceased navigate the treacherous terrain of the afterlife. Forget Siri, the ancient Egyptians had their own kind of GPS, and it was written on papyrus. Now, before we get all woo-woo about it, let's clear up some misconceptions. The Book of the Dead wasn't a single definitive text, nor was it called that by the Egyptians themselves. The phrase Book of the Dead is a modern invention, a bit of Victorian marketing flair to make it sound spookier than it was. In reality, it was a collection of spells, about 200 of them, known as the Chapters of Coming Forth by Day. Think of it as a customizable playlist for the afterlife, tailored to suit your spiritual needs and social status, with some spells dating back to as early as 1550 BCE. These spells were like cheat codes for the afterlife. Want to avoid getting lost in the dark? There's a spell for that. Need to convince Osiris, the god of the afterlife, that you're worthy? Yep, there's a spell for that too. The texts were inscribed on everything from papyrus scrolls to the walls of tombs, ensuring the deceased had a veritable library of mystical cliff notes at their disposal. But let's not get carried away by the idea of ancient Egyptians as spell-casting wizards. The real magic here was in the practicality. These texts served a dual purpose, spiritual guidance and societal control. By emphasizing the importance of following these spells and rituals, Egyptian priests maintained their authority and perpetuated the social order. The afterlife was a bureaucracy, and the priests were the gatekeepers, wielding power through their exclusive knowledge of the sacred texts. And, the economic clout. The production of these texts was a booming industry. Skilled scribes were the rock stars of their time, crafting detailed papyri that could cost a small fortune. A basic scroll could set you back a couple of D-bens, equivalent to a few months' wages for a day labourer. Want a deluxe version with your name inscribed in gold ink? Better have a few extra oxen in the bank. This wasn't just about spiritual salvation. It was about flaunting your wealth and ensuring your place in the cosmic social hierarchy. Now, in terms of evolution, the Book of the Dead was the product of centuries of spiritual innovation. Its roots can be traced back to the pyramid texts, carved into the walls of the pyramids around 2400 BCE. These were reserved exclusively for pharaohs, the ultimate VIPs of the afterlife. Over time, as the concept of the afterlife democratized, the coffin texts emerged around 2100 BCE, bringing the spells to the rising middle class. By the time the Book of the Dead rolled around, even the prosperous merchant could aspire to an eternal afterlife, provided they had the cash to foot the bill. But let's not romanticize it too much. The Book of the Dead is often depicted as a mystical tome filled with secrets of the universe, yet it was as much a tool of control as it was a spiritual guide. By dictating what spells were necessary to achieve paradise, the priests maintained a tight grip on the spiritual and economic life of Egypt. The notion that these texts held magical properties was both a marketing ploy and a genuine belief, an ancient version of selling indulgences to guarantee a smooth journey to the hereafter. And here's where the humour kicks in. Imagine being a scribe in ancient Egypt, tasked with penning these sacred texts. You're not just writing, you're crafting the ultimate travel guide for the dead, complete with tips on how to avoid getting your heart devoured by Umwut, the original beast with a taste for the corrupt. It's a bit like being the lonely planet for souls, only with higher stakes and a more discerning audience. As we peel back the layers of mystique surrounding the Book of the Dead, it becomes clear that the Egyptians' relationship with death was as complex as it was pragmatic. They didn't just prepare for the afterlife, they planned, strategized, and invested in it, much like we do with our 401ks today. In a world where the line between the divine and the mundane was as thin as a papyrus sheet, the Book of the Dead was a testament to their eternal optimism and their belief in the power of preparation. So, next time you hear about the Book of the Dead, remember, it's more than just a collection of spooky spells. It's a reflection of an ancient society's hopes, fears, and ingenious ways of managing the inevitable. It's a reminder that no matter how far we've come, the urge to plan for the unknown is a timeless human trait. And while modern life may not require us to memorize spells to appease the gods, the desire to control our destiny, both in life and death, remains ever present. As we continue our journey through the labyrinth of Egyptian afterlife beliefs, it's clear that the story is far from over. Stay tuned for more tales of ancient ingenuity, and remember, the afterlife might be eternal, but this podcast isn't. So let's keep moving. And while the Book of the Dead might have provided a roadmap to the afterlife, it was the lavish funerary goods that ensured you'd travel in style. Enter the grave goods, a veritable treasure trove of artifacts designed to accompany you on your eternal journey. Because, let's face it, no one wants to show up to paradise without a little bling. Start with the big kahuna of all burials, the tomb of Tutankhamun, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter after years of fruitless digging. When Carter finally peeked into the tomb and uttered the immortal words, "Yes, wonderful things," he wasn't exaggerating. King Tut's tomb was the archaeological equivalent of hitting the Powerball jackpot. Nestled in the Valley of the Kings, it was a cache of over 5,000 items, ranging from gold jewelry and a solid gold coffin to mundane everyday items like board games and sandals. Because, even pharaohs needed to kick back with a little R&R. But here's the kicker. Tutankhamun wasn't even a major pharaoh. He was more of a historical footnote, a boy king who ruled for a mere decade during the 18th dynasty around 1332-1423 BCE. His tomb was relatively modest in size compared to the grandiose resting places of more prominent rulers. Yet the sheer wealth packed into his burial chamber was enough to make any modern-day billionaire blush. Imagine what the tombs of the true heavyweights might have contained before they were plundered by ancient grave robbers or lost to the sands of time. So why all the glitz and glamour? For the Egyptians, funerary goods were insurance policies for the afterlife. They believed the items buried with them would provide comfort and status in the hereafter. The more lavish the grave goods, the greater the assurance of a posh afterlife. In this sense, ancient Egyptian burials were the ultimate expression of the art of keeping up with the Joneses, or, in this case, the Ramses. Economically, these lavish burials were a double-edged sword. On one hand, they drove entire industries, from goldsmiths and weavers to international trade networks that spanned the ancient world. On the other, they were a colossal resource drain, especially when a pharaoh decided to deck out their eternal resting place with enough gold to make Midas look modest. It's estimated that a single gold funerary mask, like Tutankhamun's iconic headpiece, would have cost the equivalent of several years of wages for an average labourer. Imagine trying to justify that expense in today's economy. But what about the average Joe, or average Jotep if you will, of ancient Egypt? Not everyone could afford to deck their tombs with a king's ransom in treasures. Most Egyptians were buried with far more modest offerings, a few pots, some food, maybe a favourite piece of jewellery if they were lucky. These items, while humble, served the same purpose as the pharaoh's gold, to ensure the dead were equipped for the afterlife. The stark contrast between the opulent and the ordinary reflects the rigid social hierarchy of ancient Egypt. The wealthy elite could afford extensive funerary goods, reinforcing their status both in life and in death. Meanwhile, the common folk made do with what they could, often pooling resources for a communal burial in a simple pit grave. This economic disparity was mirrored in life, where the rich enjoyed the fruits of empire while the poor toiled in the fields or worked on the monumental projects that would immortalize their rulers. And let's not ignore the role of international trade in this whole affair. Egypt's trade networks were vast, stretching from the Levant to Nubia and beyond. Exotic goods like cedar wood from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and ebony from sub-Saharan Africa flowed into Egypt, enriching its culture and economy. These trade routes were the lifelines that brought luxury items into the hands of Egyptian artisans, who then transformed them into the dazzling objects found in tombs. It's a bit like today's global economy, only with more camels and fewer shipping containers. So, while the treasures of Tutankhamun capture our imaginations, they were also a testament to the economic might and social stratification of ancient Egypt. The pharaohs weren't just hoarding wealth for the afterlife, they were showcasing Egypt's prosperity and their divine right to rule. In a world where your status in the afterlife was a reflection of your status on earth, the stakes were high and the competition fierce. In conclusion, the funerary goods of ancient Egypt were much more than mere grave trinkets. They were a powerful symbol of wealth, power, and the eternal quest for immortality. They tell a story of a civilization that believed in the continuity of life beyond death, a belief that drove its economy, defined its social structure, and left behind a legacy that continues to captivate us today. As we continue our journey through the annals of ancient Egyptian history, it's clear that the story is far from over. There's still much to uncover, so stay tuned for more tales of intrigue, opulence, and the enduring human desire to leave a mark on the sands of time. And speaking of leaving a mark on the sands of time, let's fast forward a few millennia and talk about how ancient Egyptian burial practices are still making waves in today's culture. Ever notice how mummies are a perennial favourite in Hollywood horror flicks and Halloween get-ups? It's like the ancient Egyptians have managed to secure a posthumous starring role in our modern imaginations, and boy do they play it for all it's worth. Take, for instance, the 1999 blockbuster, The Mummy. It raked in over $415 million worldwide, turning a dusty old tomb into a goldmine for Universal Pictures. Sure, the movie took more liberties than a cat burglar in a jewelry store, but it captured the public's fancy with its mix of adventure, romance, and a dash of the supernatural. Hollywood's portrayal of mummies as cursed, bandage-wrapped horrors rising from the grave has little to do with historical reality, but everything to do with the allure of the unknown. It's the perfect mix of fear and fascination that keeps audiences coming back for more, like a cinematic version of catnip. But let's not kid ourselves. The reality of mummification was far less glamorous and much more labour-intensive. It was a meticulous process that took about 70 days of hard work, involving more salt than a fast food kitchen and a surgical precision that would make modern doctors nod in admiration. The mummies weren't rising from the dead to seek revenge. They were meant to chill in the afterlife, hopefully undisturbed for eternity. The idea of a mummy's curse is more a creation of modern fiction than ancient fact, with origins in stories that emerged around the time of King Tut's tomb discovery in 1922. The so-called Curse of the Pharaohs was largely a media sensation, with newspapers cashing in on the mystique of the East and the public's appetite for the macabre. Yet, despite the myths and exaggerations, there's no denying that these ancient practices have an enduring charm. We've got Egyptian-themed parties, hieroglyphic tattoos, and an entire industry of Egyptology merchandise that owes its existence to these ancient traditions. Even our penchant for Halloween costumes takes a cue from the iconic image of the mummy, with people swaddling themselves in toilet paper for that last-minute costume flair. It's a testament to the everlasting appeal of these ancient customs, a blend of historical intrigue and modern-day whimsy. Archaeological discoveries continue to reshape our understanding of these burial practices, often debunking long-held myths while revealing new layers of complexity. The 2018 discovery of a 4,400-year-old tomb in Saqqara, belonging to a high priest named Wati, showcased the ancient Egyptians' flair for vibrant, colourful art and their penchant for family-centric tombs. These discoveries remind us that the ancient Egyptians were real people with families, jobs, and a society that revolved around both the divine and the practical aspects of life. And here's the kicker. These archaeological finds aren't just about dusty relics. They're key to understanding the social, economic, and religious dynamics of ancient Egypt. Each tomb, each artifact, is like a page in the history book of a civilization that has fascinated us for centuries. They offer a glimpse into a world where the afterlife was as much a part of life as the Nile itself, where economic disparities shaped even one's eternal resting place, and where the pharaohs wielded power both in the mortal realm and beyond the grave. But let's not get too romantic about it. While the allure of ancient Egypt is undeniable, it's essential to look past the gilded facade and acknowledge the societal structures that made these practices possible. The grandeur of the pyramids and the Valley of the Kings was built on the backs of a vast workforce driven by the political and religious imperatives of the time. The economic engine that powered these monumental projects was as critical as the spiritual beliefs that justified them. It was a world where the divine right of kings was more than just a slogan. It was a way of life that dictated the social order and the fate of nations. In the end, the legacy of ancient Egyptian burial practices is a fascinating blend of reality and fantasy, history and modern interpretation. They remind us of the human desire to seek meaning beyond mortality, to leave a legacy that transcends time. These practices reflect a civilization that understood the power of narrative, the allure of mystery, and the enduring human quest to connect with something greater than ourselves. So, as you mull over the treasures of Tutankhamun or ponder the intricacies of mummification, remember that these ancient rituals were more than just rites of passage. They were a testament to a civilization's ingenuity and its relentless pursuit of immortality. And while we may not build pyramids or craft golden masks today, the echoes of these ancient practices resonate in our modern world, a reminder of the eternal dance between life, death, and the stories we tell to bridge the gap between the two. As we wrap up this journey through the sands of time, let's take a moment to appreciate the indelible mark left by the ancient Egyptians. Their burial practices were more than just a means to an end. They were a reflection of a society that valued tradition, innovation, and the eternal question of what lies beyond. Whether through blockbuster films or Halloween costumes, their legacy continues to captivate us, proving that even in death, the ancient Egyptians knew how to make a lasting impression. And with that, let's close the sarcophagus on this chapter of history, knowing that the story of ancient Egypt will continue to inspire and intrigue for generations to come.